And fitting that we are starting 17 minutes late, but it was for a very good cause and a good reason. We were delighted to celebrate Dr. Lisa Jackson on her retirement from the school committee next week. We are just so grateful. So many things were said. We almost made her cry. I think we didn't quite get there, which I regret, but there was really beautiful, wonderful sentiments. And I will only share one quick story, which is one of my favorite stories about Lisa. I've known Lisa a very long time, and one of the most one of the unusual things about joining school committee is that we all use last names, such as Mr. and Dr. and whatnot. And there was a prior era on the school committee when actually a gentleman who's here in the audience today was consistently referred to by his honorific doctor, Dr. Warren, and there was a female member of our school committee who was referred to as Ms. Who was a physician, and there was something. What? Yes, we had a female physician who was consistently not referred to as doctor. And so when Lisa joined, Lisa has a PhD, of course, and when she joined, and one of the first meetings I referred to her as Dr. Jackson, and she just sort of started, she kind of looked around like this, like, who's Dr. Jackson? Because apparently she'd never been called Dr. Jackson in her life, except here at this table where we value education, as it turns out. And she said, why did you call me that? I said, well, we call everybody by Mr. or Ms. And she said, I think I kind of prefer Ms. And I said, let me tell you a story. And because of that story, she sort of got it instantly, and graciously accepted her earned honorific throughout the duration with graciousness, and understood that some things are over and above self, as she beautifully said earlier this evening. So thank you for that. We appreciate your service in so many ways. All right, administrative business. This is the calendar. For some reason, we've added more meetings, which is sort of terrifying. But anyway, this is the list: both school committee meetings, our subcommittee meetings, as well as building committee meetings for the ninth school, building committee meetings for the high school, and other important events. Town election is May 2nd. Tuesday, please, everyone, do your civic duty and vote. There's a Steps to Success Gala on May 10th, town meeting, which is going to be very important for the schools this year, as it always is, but especially this year. It starts on May 23rd, and there's a gala on the 7th for the Mental Health Center, the Brookline Center. Additions?
To expand on the Mental Health Center Gala, it is honoring the retiring Cindy Price, the Executive Director for the last 38 years. And so that's going to be held at the Auto Museum at Lars Anderson, and it's at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
And invitations are out.
Okay.
I just want to add, and it's in the superintendent report later tonight, but the annual Brookline Education Foundation event honoring the Calverley Award winners is on Tuesday. I believe it's a Tuesday. The date is May 16th. 3:30 p.m. at Newberry College.
Which is always a fantastic event, and then we get school committee members who join. So
celebrating teachers.
Yes. Good. Any other additions to the calendar? All right. We have a consent agenda of past records and field trips. Is there a motion from anyone? Mr. Pollack. Is there a second? Dr. Jackson. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. So before we get started, we'd like to welcome our guests, Troop 88285, and are you a sponsor? What are you?
I'm one of the troop leaders.
Troop leader, Rebecca Mountner. We're delighted to have you all here. Welcome. All right, we have subcommittee and liaison reports. Ms. Stram, Finance.
So Finance has not met since our last meeting, but we have had meetings with various other town bodies in the interim about the budget, most recently with the TMMA board. And just to give you all a sense of those conversations very briefly, and I think people have very much appreciated the increased transparency that Ms. Dunn has placed into the budget document, and also the willingness to come out and speak to folks to answer questions. There have been quite a lot of questions about the statement in the budget that we will need an override for future years, and folks are having questions around, when will that happen? Will it be placed on a ballot with the capital overrides as well? And I know that you all know this, but I wanted to say this for the broader public, that is a decision that the selectmen will make, and we will work closely with the selectmen in their consideration of that decision. But we've been quite clear that we do think an operating override will be needed, and we look forward to working with the selectmen on that.
Thank you so much. Questions? Okay, Capital, Mr. Pollack.
The Capital Subcommittee just met a few minutes ago, and the main event of our meeting was a presentation on the very exciting proposed gift of a new early education building on Harvard Street for the Brookline Early Education Program. The representatives council from the foundation that wants to make the gift, and their architects, CBT, came, gave a very short presentation with plans of the building. It's a proposed 6-story building with the 5th floor being in sort of open air outdoor space on top of all the classrooms. It's on the site just down the hill next to the gas station at Stop and Shop is the site. It's between the piano factory and the gas station is their site. And we had a good conversation, and it was kind of a high-level outline, and they are going to come a week from tonight and make the same presentation to school committee. And look forward to that. And then I think the other thing that's kind of happening with Capital is there's a lot of attention in various forums, and particularly in the advisory committee, as well as the Board of Selectmen, around the requested CIP funding for the design phases of the schematic design phases of the high school expansion project and the ninth school project. And those are being presented downstairs tonight by the Capital Subcommittee to the advisory committee, and also we have presentations here tonight. And one or more of us may be jumping up and down between the two places to make sure that we can also attend advisory when they take up these considerations.
Good. We have a capital-filled agenda for the evening, so any questions on something that we're not going to be talking about later tonight? Okay. Next item is curriculum. Ms. Scotto.
Okay. It's been a busy day for curriculum. Today, in the morning, we met with the Devotion School Improvement Council. We had 6 parents, we had 4 teachers, we had the principal, Heidi Cook, and we had 4 school committee members there. So it was quite a robust group with a lively discussion. The discussion centered around the benchmarks for the School Improvement Council. And you see how well organized I am here. For the benchmarks for this past year, 16-17. And a lot of the discussion was around the use of meeting the needs of the diverse learners at Driscoll. Lots of discussion around the BAS assessments in reading, and the teachers basically saying that they were very, very pleased with the kind of information they were gaining about their students as readers. There was also some talk about the use of technology, and it was interesting because Driscoll has, they're not exactly a pilot, they said, but they're using the Canvas program that is used at the high school. And what we learned there was that we need to be very careful about providing professional development so people will really know how these programs can be very effective in their classroom. People were using it, but I think that they felt very much the need that they have more professional development around it. And they were very pleased with their change this year from having an auction to having a family giving campaign to raise money for the PTO, and they had very high participation. And Heidi Cook said anything from $1 up was welcomed, but so many parents gave, and it was a very successful fundraiser without having all of the hype of an auction, where in fact a lot of what you sell is high-end, people bid it up. So a fewer number of people are actually contributing to it. What I have to say about this kind of meeting with the School Improvement Council, as opposed to what we sometimes do, which is meeting right before school committee, it is very, I think it's a very good thing for us to be meeting with parents and teachers as well as just the principals. So that was the first meeting of the day. The second meeting of the day was a curriculum meeting at 9:30 where we had 2 presentations, and Ben Lummis presented some information about data reporting that will occur before the end of the year and will help the staff and the administration dig into the extent and causes of the inequitable outcomes that we see in relation to various subgroups of students. So we're really looking forward to seeing that data and talking to the administration about it. That was followed by Joanna Lieberman, who was the curriculum coordinator for language arts in K-8, and she gave us a very extensive report about the literacy program across the board from K-8. We talked about the values and goals of the literacy program, the Literacy Collaborative, which is in 7 out of 9 schools. At this point, our plans are to continue to educate teachers in this program, and in the next 3 years, we will be offering 60 hours of professional development. That has been stated as an expectation for 1 year, but those 60 hours are spread over 3 years. We have 2 kinds of specialists working with children in the schools. There are intervention specialists who are working one-on-one with children who need it, and we also have literacy coaches working with teachers. And I think that the goal is to help every child have very top-notch reading skills very early. So it was a great presentation. We have a number of curriculum meetings coming up. On May 17th, we will be having a curriculum meeting, and we will be discussing what has gone just out of my mind. Do you remember?
Data reporting.
Oh, the data, that will be, the curriculum committee will be looking at the data reporting that I mentioned earlier. That's a full curriculum meeting. On May 18th, will be the Devotion School Improvement Council meeting, and that is at 7 in the morning, 7 to 8. On June 6th, we have a 7:30 meeting at BHS with their School Improvement Council. On June 7th, we're meeting with Runkle, and they meet, they're either the 7th or the 15th. I've gotten a mistake on my paper, but they meet at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so that will be easier. And on May 18th, we will be meeting with Pierce and Lawrence, 2 new principals, but we'll be doing that before school committee meeting. Baker has to be rescheduled, and we have gotten an email with some dates on it, but we haven't set that meeting up yet. But I invite people to join us. They're lively meetings and very informative.
Thank you. Questions? All right. I, too, appreciate going into the schools and meeting the teachers and hearing from the parents about their experience. I think it's a great innovation this year. So thank you. All right. Government relations, Ms. Charlevsky.
So many of you might have read in the paper that the House budget has come out. Today, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't had a time to look at it yet to see some of the effects. I don't think our staff has either yet. But the next milestone will be the Senate budget in May. The middle of May is when it's supposed to come out. The other piece, I got an email that our Bright program is going to be down at the State House talking about the program. Apparently, it is now in 50 communities across Massachusetts, which is really some exponential growth. And if anybody wants to come down with me, it's at 2 o'clock next week at the State House. I'd be happy to have you come with me.
Fantastic.
Or meet me there, or whatever. It's in the, I can get you the information.
Can you email it to the full committee just so people have
Good
it?
idea. I'll do that.
Excellent. Policy review, Dr. Jackson?
This is cool. I get to hopefully approve another policy on my last night. Mary Ellen's here with me to help me out. Yes. Can't do it without her. So in your materials is a proposed policy on authorized signatures. We've reviewed this once, took it back to committee, and in particular focused on making sure that we had appropriate alternate signatures available when people are out, when things still need to keep moving, and to make sure that the intent behind whatever might be getting signed is maintained. So Mary Ellen did a lot of work on that part, and also with legal to make sure we had enough coverage. And I also noticed we figured out sort of on what amounts certain things can be signed, et cetera. So it's here for you to consider for a second reading and vote. And do you want to add anything in particular for the committee to think about?
Yes, I actually have to ask you not to vote it. We had a last minute legal request. So could we wait till next week or amend it next week, or if it needs to be amended next week? So there's just one last item that Andrew and I need to talk to town council about.
Could I just make one minor?
If there's more, we'll add on.
Yeah, there's just one minor correction. There's where we talk about 100,000 being the threshold, or I think we just need to be clearer. Need to be consistent. There's some places where it says over 100,000. Some places it says 100,000 or greater.
Yep.
We need to make that consistent.
So you include into the.
What's that?
That's part of our conversation with town council.
Oh, okay.
Is to straighten
Just
that
to
out.
sort of
Clear that out.
Yeah.
Yep. And where the town council is in the mix, and we also had Dave Janikakis, who's the chief procurement officer for the town. He looked at it and reviewed it as well, so he's on board as well. So we just need to do those last minute tweaks. So edits.
So never mind.
So close.
Patience, that's the patience part.
Okay. So, are there any additional liaisons or updates? Mr. Chang?
I attended the Climate Action Committee's meeting on Monday, and a lot of the conversation was around Article 21 at the Warren article, which talks about the net zero energy for the 9th elementary school as well as expansion of the BHS. Looks like there's on the agenda the petitioners, Warren Alohi, Kathleen Scanlon, and as well as Alan Chris will probably be here to discuss this. The revised Article 21, I think, is a sound article. I think basically we're targeting a silver LEED standard, which is really something that has been achieved for Runkle and most likely exceeded by Devotion. So it's been approved by advisory at this point, and I hope you guys support it. I think it's a great down payment, if you will, really for this community to shoot for energy efficiencies in our buildings as we move forward.
Terrific. We will be talking about it further a little bit later on. Other liaisons? Okay, any other announcements?
So my kids had always hoped there'd be some perk for having me on the school committee. So I'm going to take a privileged opportunity, as permitted by Madam Chair, and share an announcement that I think is unique enough to make it worthy of announcing here. My son, Coleman Jackson, who is sitting in the back of the room there, looking at very sheepish, is a sophomore at Brookline High School. He's also a rugby player for Brookline High, and he also is a student of Japanese. He's in the honors Japanese program, and is the first Brookline High School student to be accepted into the Japan Society Junior Fellows Leadership Program. And will be going to Japan this summer for 3 weeks to live with a family, study Japanese, and become an ambassador of sorts between the U.S. and Japan. So being a little proud, I wanted to share and also applaud the district in terms of the available opportunities for students to be able to do such amazing things as this. So.
Congratulations. She waited right till the end to like completely embarrass you, but a tremendous honor. Fantastic. All right. Seeing no further liaisons or updates, we'll move into public comment. Thank you. And here, this is for you. Excellent. So we have 4 people signed up. First is Elizabeth Mishka. Welcome.
I like the new arrangement there. And I was thinking coming over that I feel like Melissa McCarthy, you know, spicy. So hi, I'm Elizabeth Mishka, and I'm a parent here in Brookline. I'm a representative of CPAC, which is the Special Education Parents Advisory Council, and co-chair still. And I just want to let you know that CPAC has 2 main missions, and one is to serve the families with special needs, and the other is to advise the school committee. And we are not, and never have been, involved in any politics, local, state, federal, anything. That's not what we do. CPAC does not represent any candidate from any of the departments that are voting on Tuesday. It is not something we do. There are some documents out that may look a little misleading, and this is my only public forum because I didn't make the tab, which was coming out a day early. So thank you for letting me speak on the record, and I wish everybody well. Thank you. Good night. I'm off to the high school for a board meeting.
Terrific. Thank you very much. All right, Nina Brown.
I may have signed up on the wrong speakers list.
Do you want to speak on the high school?
Yeah.
So would you mind holding?
Not at all.
Okay, excellent, because we will come to that. Rebecca Mountner.
My name's Rebecca Mountner. In addition to being one of the leaders of Troop 88285, I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 11. I also want to acknowledge my other co-leader, David Charbonneau, who's in the back. There's actually 4 of us, and we have 4 schools. But I thought I'd take this opportunity, because I've been meaning to reach out to you all individually, about Article 22, which is on the town meeting warrant, which is about the Government Alliance for Race and Equity. And the Government Alliance for Race and Equity is a national network of local governments trying to address racism sort of from inside government, and recognizing that even with the best of intentions, sometimes policies, procedures, budgets have the effect of burdening some groups of people, often people of color, and benefiting other groups, even if that was never the intent. So I'm very excited about this. It's been a practice that initiated in Seattle about 15 years ago and has now spread to over 100 jurisdictions. It's only recently come to the East Coast. Boston's very involved, and Brookline has officially joined. But the real work comes when a department decides to make this their approach to how they analyze policies. There's a whole process that there are many ways this can be done, but the racial equity tool that many communities use is the one that has been developed in Seattle, just because they've been doing it the longest, so they've tried a lot and learned a lot, although Hennepin County in Minnesota has a different approach. The way it often starts is that one town department decides to start with one town department, because it's a labor-intensive effort. And the town meeting warrant article asks that the town administrator and the and the Board of Selectmen, as well as the superintendent and the school committee, discuss which would be the appropriate department. The implication being that the schools might be a good place to start. And that is what has happened in Boston. And they've just launching now. I'm not here tonight to tell you I think the schools absolutely need to go first, but to invite you to really learn about GARE, consider it as an approach as you go through your processes during the year, and to suggest the schools might be a very useful place. I know the superintendent has made a real priority in terms of making fighting racism a priority in terms of staff development and the sort of the personal level of how we can fight racism in ourselves and learn about unconscious bias and other things. That work is really important. GARE is the other end of the spectrum. It's the nuts and bolts and the stuff it's not about hearts and minds. It's about what are the things that we do that do have a disparate impact even if we didn't intend it. And I think we really need both parts. I'm thrilled the superintendent has taken this on as a priority, and I think now there's an opportunity for the other part of the work to happen. Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much for coming and bringing your troop. And thank you to the other troop leaders as well. Ginny LaPlante. Oh, I see. Excellent. All right. Is there anybody else who is here who wishes to make public comment who didn't potentially sign up? All right. Very good. Thank you very much. It's time for our student report. Ms. Jennings, welcome.
Hello. I have quite a lot today. I'll start off with a topical thing with the eco-friendly resolution. The Brookline High School Brookline High School Student Council approved a resolution for a 3-cent gas tax in support of infrastructure for bicyclists and pedestrian safety. It reached the tab and got a lot of criticism, and a lot of people seem to be very upset with it, but I, for one, I think it's very cool that the school is, so the student body is invested. This is done by the Brookline High School Environmental Action Club, who the student council has been working very closely with this year. So I'm happy that has come to fruition. There was an announcement this week about the rodent issue in the high school, and reinforcement of eating policy around the school and maintaining it to the cafeteria overflow area. And also, in addition to that, in the announcement, there was a concern about student focus, especially it being springtime. Students want to hang out on the field. Maybe, especially seniors like me, losing some motivation to push through the year. So there was kind of a encouragement to stay on task, keep going, and it's not that long now. The renovation of the high school there are bits and pieces of it that have started. Just optimization of space. The SWS lounge, sadly for me, was renovated into a classroom. It hasn't been, it's not ready to use yet, but it's been cleaned and painted, and with a focus on proportional representation of student body, because with the high school expansion and having a set number of students being elected from each grade doesn't necessarily make sense. So we're thinking of perhaps changing that to a proportional representation system. And it's got 4 weeks left of school. I'm not counting. Not me. I'm very excited, but I will be sad to leave you guys.
Excellent. Well, we have very much enjoyed your updates all the way through. Questions for Ms. Jennings? All right. Seeing none, thank you very much. It's time for the superintendent's report. Mr. Bott?
Great. So you should have the report in front of you. I'm just going to take a moment to read through the first bullet so that it's a very important recognition of some outstanding educators, and I want to read it into the cameras and the record. So the Brookline Education Foundation Calverley Award winners. Each year since 1984, the Brookline Education Foundation has presented the Ernest R. Calverley Award to Brookline teachers in recognition of their professional achievements and contributions to the public schools of Brookline. 2 awards are given annually, one to a high school educator and one to an elementary school educator. The award is named for Dr. Calverley, who served as a distinguished public school leader, educator, and Brookline School Superintendent from 1931 to 1964. On April 12th, I had the pleasure of joining the BEF Executive Director Liz Askley, Board President Ian Rothman, Associate Director Molly Schmidt in surprise visits to the recipients of this year's Calverley Awards. I'm going to stop from reading this for a moment because one of the things Dr. Conley told me was early on, one of the first things he said is when you walk into the classroom to deliver the Calverley Award, people panic. And he was correct. This year's elementary school recipient is Dominique Ferdinand, a kindergarten teacher at Lawrence. Early education principal Vicki Milstein joined us as we surprised Dominique, who is deep in grade level planning work with her colleagues. Now, unlike what I just said about being in panic, we went into the meeting. It was kindergarten and first grade teachers in professional development with our math curriculum coordinator, and the conversation just continued as we walked in. And I had to say, this is wonderful, but this is actually not why we're here today, and announced Dominique's that she had won the award. I will also add, not in the report, Dominique is the first kindergarten teacher in the history of the Calverley Awards to receive the award. This year's high school recipient is mathematics teacher Betty Strong. Betty did have that reaction as we walked into the room of panic. Headmaster Anthony Meyer, Dean of Students Lisa Redding, High School Math Coordinator Josh Paris joined us to surprise Betty as her trigonometry class was just about to begin. Dominique and Betty are incredibly deserving of this recognition. We look forward to joining educators and administrators from across the district to publicly honor them at the Brookline Education Foundation's Celebrating Teachers reception at 3:30 p.m. May 16th at Newbury College. The Brookline Education Foundation will also announce the recipients of 20 teacher grants and 11 collaborative grants at the Celebrating Teachers reception. I'll also add that the Brookline Education Foundation has granted a total of $59,000 for district-wide work in the coming year, including supporting district leadership team retreats to continue building our still relatively new leadership team over the course of the next school year. They're continuing support for new and interim principal mentoring programs. We've learned this year of how invaluable the deep level of support that the Brookline Education Foundation grants provides to our new principals. It's in conjunction with the supports that we provide as senior leadership. It's an incredible partnership that really deepens the development, support, and first-year guidance for our newest school administrators. It includes the Superintendent's Professional Development Grant, a grant for making informed and intentional instructional decisions, a grant that started this year and will continue through next year, and continued support of district-wide educational equity work. And the details of all of those are included in the report. With respect to the Lawrence principal search, I communicated earlier this week with Lawrence school families and staff with an update of the principal search process. The 14-member principal search committee completed first-round interviews on April 13th. The committee identified candidates to move forward into the next phase of the search process, which is already underway. The finalists are participating in interviews with senior staff this week, after which we will conduct in-depth reference checks. Following that, we've tentatively scheduled site visits to each of the finalists' current schools. Excuse me, a subset of the original search committee will join me in these site visits. My goal remains to name a preferred candidate by May 11th. And as of this date, we are still on track for that. I do want to thank publicly the members of the search committee who volunteered so much of their time. The committee reviewed over 35 applications, developed just incredibly high-quality interview questions, interviewed candidates over the course of 3 days, and identified finalists for the next phase of the search. Not only was it a lot of work, it was very intense. It was work that happened over a 2-week period, and so it was a great deal of time for educators and for families, family members who were participating in the search. The insight and expertise and thoughtful collaboration of the search committee has truly been an invaluable part of of this very important process. I'm glad that Ms. Jennings mentioned the 3 Hidden Veterans Ceremony. I did have the honor of attending the 3 Hidden Veterans Ceremony this Tuesday, April 25th, in front of the high school. The ceremony honored 3 enslaved Brookline men, Adam, Peter, and Prince, who marched to the Battle of Lexington, April 19, 1775. Since 2005, the town of Brookline has held flag-raising ceremonies memorializing Brookline veterans who served honorably in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. But the service of these 3 Brookline veterans of the Revolutionary War had been hiding in plain sight. Adam, Peter, and Prince marched to Lexington with the Brookline militia, engaged with the British, and helped create a new nation. They were memorialized on Tuesday as some of Brookline's first veterans with a flag-raising ceremony and very meaningful ceremony. BHS educator and Brookline resident Malcolm Cawthorn led the ceremony, which was sponsored by the Brookline Board of Selectmen, the Brookline Veteran Services Department, the Brookline Department of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations, the Hidden Brookline Committee, bringing to light the hidden history of slavery and freedom in our town, the Brookline American Legion Post 11, and the Brookline Veterans of Foreign Wars Stephen F. Rutledge Post. Please join me in congratulating Brookline High School senior Amir Siraj, who was selected as one of 723 semifinalists to advance to the final round of the 2017 U.S. Presidential Scholars Competition. Of 3.5 million graduating seniors, only 5,100 students were identified as candidates in the program nationwide. The 723 semifinalists have been selected from across the country. The program was established in 1964 to honor some of the nation's most distinguished graduating high school seniors and represents the highest honor for a high school student. The White House Commission on Presidential Scholars will select up to 161 U.S. presidential scholars in May. We wish Amir the best of luck. And lastly, on a much more somber and very important note, I want to update the committee on the Netflix series 13 Reasons Why. You may have heard of reports about the series now airing on Netflix, premiering earlier this month. The series is based on a young adult novel and focuses on a high school student who dies by suicide. It features 13 recordings that the main character made prior to her death that are shared over the course of the series. It's a very popular show, and this popularity among young people has caused concern among suicide prevention professionals. Attached to the superintendent report, you'll find a copy of a letter that we sent to families and staff today regarding this issue. Several other school districts sent letters earlier this week, and as you can see from the letter, it's of critical importance, I believe, as well as educators throughout the system, to inform parents that the series exists, the nature of how graphic the series is, and some suggestions for resources in talking with youth about it. I think what's unique about this, as opposed to movies in the past, is the ubiquitous access to Netflix via phones, computers, iPads, sort of multiple devices. So there's a great deal of access. Many of our middle school students are talking about this in class, as we've discussed with our guidance counselors over the last 24 hours. One thing you'll note in the letter towards the end is that our guidance team is meeting on Monday and has invited our nurses as well as our school psychologists to join to dive into some much deeper work on this particular challenge and how to support students be mindful of what may be silent effects that students have, what to look for, and how to support students and families as this series continues to sort of gain momentum and popularity.
Thank you for that diverse and wide-ranging set of updates. We appreciate it, and we appreciate the educators being aware and plugged into this. Questions for the superintendent? All right. Seeing none, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We're excited for the Caverly Award winners, and one of the highlights of our spring is always when they come to speak with us and share their stories. It is now time for our first presentation and public hearing on the Brookline High School expansion design alternatives. We are delighted to have our architects, the feasibility study architects, HMFH, here to do a presentation. Then we will have a public hearing. We'll have 3 to 5 minutes per person, depending on how many people we have, and then we will possibly vote on a preferred design option. So without further ado, Mr. Lewis?
Okay, and I believe that Dan Loomis was going to make a presentation before ours, but I don't see him. I think he's here in the building, but okay.
Was there something in Okay.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right, all right.
Mr. Loomis is just flummoxed because we're starting a little early, which we never do.
Hi, folks.
Can we turn this on?
I'm just turning this on. It doesn't seem to be going on. It's coming.
It's going to come up here also? Rebecca, it's going to come up here also, but it'll be bigger there.
We're going to need them.
Yes, you will be attending this high school.
No, it's okay. Just opening up what I want to open up. So, folks, what I want to do is just quickly show the members of the audience and those watching on TV just how to get the latest information on the BHS expansion project. And then wanted to ask the chair if you thought it was necessary to just to show folks some of the need behind the high school or not in terms of enrollment projections, and then just one summary slide on the ed plan. Okay, great. So just go into
And not because the school committee members haven't seen it, but just because this link ends up going viral to various places. So, and we obviously have a new generation of high school students, pre-high school students perhaps, who might be interested in the numbers of their classmates.
Thank you. So just to start, so everyone in the community knows how to get the latest information on the building projects, both the ninth school and the high school, simply this is the district website. There's a building projects tab right here, and you can go to either project. We'll go to BHS expansion because that's what we're talking about tonight. And then here, there's a landing page. Folks can send an email, question or comment about the designs or anything related to the high school expansion. You can sign up for our email list here, so you can get updates, regular updates on all the developments related to the high school expansion project. And then, importantly, on the left-hand side over here, there is a list of upcoming public meetings, which are all laid out here, time, location, a list of previously held meetings. And then in terms of getting much more information, there are 2 links. One is a page that has all summaries of the latest meetings and the presentations as well from those meetings. If you don't want to read all of that, you just want to get to presentations, you can just go to the presentations and studies page here, and there's a full listing of all the recent presentations and studies that have been done going back to 2015 or 2013 even. Okay, so there, as much as you want to know is here. Just, I'm not sure if everyone heard that, but this woman just said that's amazing. Okay, support. Thank you. And then just quickly we will look at, make sure I get the right one here, a few slides showing sort of the need to expand BHS. Andrew, if you want to go through these. One second here.
This is highly relevant because in front of town meeting in a month is going to be appropriations not only for the high school project but also the night school project and the expansions necessary. So you'll see these numbers a lot.
So just as a reminder to everyone, as a reminder to everyone, and has been presented many times, and for those of you who have not seen this before as a new presentation, we've done work this year to look at Brookline, town of Brookline enrollment trends back to 1976, looking forward through 2026. What you see going through the 2024-25 school year on this chart is two growth patterns. So the blue is actual enrollment, and then the orange and the gray is projected enrollment. There's a very comprehensive enrollment report that is on the district website that shows all of the assumptions and all of the work, the data that's built into the enrollment projections. What these trends show is the orange trend is significant and continued growth to nearly 2,500 students at BHS from the current number of just 2,000 over the next 8 years. What the gray line shows is how that changes increases upwards with the known new developments, the new developments that have been brought forward, not assumed new developments or rumored, but the ones that have been filed, not necessarily approved, but filed new developments, and the impact that those new developments will have on enrollment throughout the town. And you can see that in particular at Brookline High School, that raises the projected enrollment by nearly 100 students starting in the 2020-21 school year. The large gap. The 2 years prior to that, you can see sort of the acceleration as those developments start to come online. Another way to look at this is the 2010-2011 BHS student enrollment was just above 1,700. Current enrollment is, for this school year, just under 2,000, up 254 students from 2010-2011. The short-term increase to 2021-2022 brings us to just over 2,400 students, a growth of 700 students in grades 9 through 12 from that 2010-2011 baseline. And the projection out to 24-25, that longer-term projection takes us over, significantly over 2,500 to nearly 2,600 students, a growth of 856 students. So it's huge growth both over the last several years and continued and accelerated growth as we move forward again over the next 8 years. So the architects will be presenting different options in just a few minutes prior to as a part of the public hearing. What is important to frame for everyone is that the educational plan, we developed an educational plan that has driven the architect's work. And that educational plan is developed around these three questions. How do we more deeply engage all students at BHS? How do we better serve all students so students are connected, specifically so that everyone feels fully supported and thriving members of the community, succeeding both academically and socially? And thirdly, how do we accommodate the growth and expansion and still retain the essential unity, feel, and cohesion of the Brookline High School campus? I will add that the educational plan creates a vision for continuing the excellence of our departments and integrating the work of our departments with project-based learning and cross-curricular learning. So what the architects will discuss, what you will see through the many presentations, is not only the additional classroom spaces that are needed to accommodate students, the additional science, the new science labs to bring our science labs up to 21st century standards for our science, technology, engineering learning, but also collaborative learning spaces, the learning spaces, the capacity within our campus to bring students together for project-based learning, for cross-curricular learning. And again, I want to reserve the bulk of the time for our architect's presentation. But the educational plan is online. It is a very comprehensive, a very detailed document of the vision, the educational vision behind the work that that our architects are about to present.
Great. And we have Mr. Lewis, we have just over an hour for your presentation and all of the public comment.
Okay.
So
I will try
choose
to
your
be
slides
as
wisely.
prompt as I can be. Just a moment to swap out the laptops here. Okay, and we're up. So first, I'm Pip Lewis. I'm a principal at HMFH Architects, and we spend most of our time designing and building public schools in Massachusetts and around in New England. And we're engaged with this study here. What we're doing here is we're sort of approaching the end of the feasibility phase of the project and going on, looking to go ahead into the next phase, which we call schematic design. And what's happening, I guess, on May 23rd town meeting is just a vote to approve the fees and the budget for the schematic design part of the project. After schematic design, the project would move into design development and move ahead toward, if everything moves smoothly, we would be looking to start design development in November, December, and possibly going out to bid early in 2019 or very late 2018, trying to get, because you saw the growth that's going to be occurring at the school, the classrooms, the additional classroom spaces online for the 2021 school year. Moving ahead. Let me get this thing moving. There we go. Okay, so first I'm going to give you a very brief sort of overview of the various options that we're looking at, so you can see the sort of the scope of the options. Then I'm going to go through each option quickly to describe what's in it, and then there'll be another summary at the end, which includes the project costs of the various options. So first of all, we're as we look at the campus here, which it includes the Cypress Field, the Brookline High School main facility located here, the Tappan Gymnasium on Tappan Street, the Unified Arts Building also on Tappan Street, and the play area located here. Cypress is located here. You'll see as we get through to option 4 that we're going to start looking at this property here, which we call 111 Cypress Street. And first, we're looking at a project here which replaces the academic wing on the corner of Tappan and Greenough. This is Greenough. This is Tappan, with a larger academic building, so that we can accommodate the increased enrollment and provide a new science facilities, as was referred to earlier, and preserves, and you'll see that this becomes, preserves this building here, which is a Schlunz gym, and also leaves the Tappan Gymnasium and other facilities pretty much as they are. But as we move ahead, we also looked at this option 2, which goes another step further and provides more academic spaces, more collaborative learning spaces, some improvement to some of the specialty programs like music, performing arts, and things like that, and provides a new black box theater, et cetera. And this is sort of developed along the lines of developing the campus consistently with some of the MSBA standards, Mass School Building Authority standards that are in the state, because they are involved with the financing of many of the high schools that are done in the Commonwealth. But what I want you to notice is because in this option, a new academic building is built here that frames this one here. That causes the Schlunz gym to be demolished. The Schlunz gym is currently the competition gym for the school. And so that requires us to go over to this Tappan complex and do some renovation work there to create a new competition gym at Tappan. Then we have an option 3, which takes the work that was done by various visioning sessions done by the school community and the education plan that's been developed over the last year or so, and tries to incorporate everything for each department that is looked for at the school. This has to really be accomplished in phases because what we're doing in order to get a lot of new capacity into the building, we are replacing the 3 buildings that front along Greenough Street sort of one by one, so that we're displacing a smaller number of students into temporary locations. And the eventual plan looks like a whole new facility, but it's actually done in stages. Now, this also includes, again, because the Schlunz gym is taken out, a facility at the Tappan Gymnasium. This is even a larger facility because one of the things that was called for in this education plan is a large field house with an indoor track. So that's why you see that large box there. Then we looked at option 4. And for option 4, the town has talked about and decided that it would go ahead and purchase this property at 111 Cypress Street, which allows a building to be built afresh there. This is a great convenience to the school because it allows you to build all this new classroom space while the existing high school continues to operate as it does now without the problem of or the difficulties and complexities of phased renovation and construction work going on right on the campus. Now, I've got 4 option 4s. So, but it's really not that complicated. There's 2 combinations of 2 things. So you will see 2 versions of the building on 111 Cypress Street, and you will see 2 versions of the main campus. The 2 versions of the main campus have entirely to do with 2 different approaches to this renewal of the science department that we have talked about. And so if you put those 2 different options together in different combinations, that gives you 4 options. So the first option really shows this new facility built entirely at 111 Cypress Street with just a pedestrian area crossing the MBTA Green Line tracks that run right through there. And we see this is developing as an academic building. Option 4C, we take another move with this building at 111 Cypress Street, and we actually bring the building across the railroad tracks using air rights over the railroad tracks, giving you actually a front facade of the building facing right onto Tappan Street, which really sort of maximizes the connection between this building and the rest of the main campus, because we're really trying to tie the whole campus together. And then in this option 4C, you have a renovated science area here, and then in option 4D, you have, it's the same thing with the building bridging over the railroad tracks, but we have a new science wing constructed here on the corner of Greenough and Tappan. So going back to option 1, this is the one that basically replaces the current wing of the building on Tappan and Greenough Street with a larger building. That's where you get the additional classroom spaces that you need. And you will see, I just showed 2 representative floor plans. On all of these floor plans, the science is in red. You'll see on each of these schemes that we have a new sort of science clusters that are being developed in the new building. And you can see the footprint of the old building that's right there. And you can see how much larger this new building actually is. In addition to this wing here, we're building a small addition sort of facing into the courtyard, most of the courtyard remaining. This scheme shows a library on the top floor of the Schluntz gym out of renovated science spaces. And the science space at the moment is all on the third floor in these spaces that you have here. What doesn't get renovated into science will get renovated back into sort of standard classroom spaces in this scheme. Then option 2, which expands that academic, sort of doubles that academic wing by building here and here. And you will see that what we're doing here is a very similar plan to what we're doing in option 1, with the exception that this is all new academic space, framing the other side of the main sort of entrance facade of the building. And this gives us space for new black box theaters and things like along those lines, improvements to the music program. I will also mention that this also improves the cafeteria, which is located under the auditorium, located here. So it's coming out to daylight on the street. And then option 3, which embodies everything. We were trying to put everything in that was asked for in the educational plan in this scheme, and you get a much larger scheme here that, as I said, step by step in 1, 2, and then 3 phases replaces the 3 buildings along Greeno with a larger, more efficient building. It also creates sort of a courtyard space, an enclosed courtyard space in the existing courtyard, which becomes a new dining commons, a theater, and hovering up above there, a new library. But you can see this becomes phase by phase, a large new classroom facility with lots of newly reimagined programs and collaborative spaces. And of course you see the new science program located here. They're stacking on 3 floors there. Now, when I go ahead to the options 4, you will see that we're building an academic building on Cypress Street. There are advantages to this with the phasing, because you get to put all that capacity there while school is still happening at the main campus. And then when this gets built, you can easily sort of empty out portions of the existing building, like wings, in order to renovate them or to build new into this building, and allow you to do the renovations on the existing building more easily. In this scheme, you see a pedestrian plaza that crosses over the Green Line tracks, and the building itself sits entirely at 111 Cypress Street. The floor plan of that shows we're only showing 3 representative floors, but it has a ground floor that is actually located sort of at the Brington Road level, located here. And then the main first floor is actually at the height of Cypress Street here. There's about a whole floor's difference between those 2. And then the building continues up for 3 more floors above there. In these schemes, because in all we need 24 science labs. So when we're building this academic building at Cypress Street, we're building 6 of the science labs there, which means we need to have the 23 that are currently at the existing building get transformed into 18 science labs. And then this is the option which shows the facility sort of stretching across the tracks. Here we're trying to sort of stretch out the footprint of the building so we can lower its profile on Brington Road. I will point out here that all of these things that we're showing you here are not designs. They're really just, we're showing the town this sort of massing that we're talking about with the amount of space that we're talking about. So you can see the scale of what's envisioned. And as we go into schematic design, we will work on a more specific designs for the facilities. So these are really just massing blocks. Here, when you look at the floor plan, what's kind of nifty about this one is that you do actually enter the building right off of Tappan Street, so that you get a stronger sense of connectivity between this new facility and the main campus. And then if we're able to sort of work on the floor plan of this, we're bringing the scale of this portion of the building down a little bit compared to how it was on the other option. When I go back into the main building, and I'll show you the floor plan, what we're doing here in some of these options is renovating the existing science program. And if you don't know, the existing science program is all on the third floor of the main building located here. So what we're doing, and each of the science labs at the moment is really too small, and they're out of date. So we really wanted to renew this, bring the science program up to date, and provide larger science facilities. So we're transforming the 23 science labs that you have right now into 18 larger science labs. So that's why that doesn't really show up there, because it's all renovation inside. You can see it. It's on the top floor above the Schlunch gym, and then it stretches all the way across and goes around the corner here on the third floor. As we did our counts, we saw that we needed 5 extra classrooms to be added to the building in order to accommodate the enrollment. And so we're showing a very small 1-story high 5 classroom addition there. That might even go in different places and things like that. We wanted to just show that to indicate that we have 5 classrooms that we have to make up in this scheme. So here's the floor plan. The red areas is essentially, I show you the first floor on the left-hand side and the third floor on the right-hand side. And this is the newly configured science department, similar to the original one, except that there are fewer, larger science labs closer to the state standards of today. And then you can see the small academic building, 5 classrooms that are placed on what's currently a small parking lot on Tappan Street. The other options with option 4 were to build a new science wing 3 stories high, replacing just a portion of that Tappan academic building that we've been talking about. And you can see it turning the corner there on Greeno and Tappan. And the floor plan of that looks like this, where we have 3 floors of these clusters of the science labs. Because they're sort of creating a triangular space, we're finding we have a good core space to use for, on the top 2 floors, a maker space to be located here, some collaborative spaces to be located here. These things were talked about and asked for in the educational plan, so here we're making a step toward providing some of that. And these really become what we call STEM clusters on the 3 floors of the building. Science here is better tied in with the other programs in the building because it's distributed on all 3 floors. And also here you get, here's the old science program, and we get to take each of those classrooms and just pull out the science equipment and convert them, renovate them into new classroom spaces. Just turning quickly to Tappan Gymnasium, and we were looking at various different options with this, and I won't dwell on this because I think the main focus here is going to be talking about these academic spaces. And we have a scheme here which is just doing some renovations on the lower floors of the building to convert really underused locker room spaces and sort of combining the lobby space of the Kirain pool with the lobby space of the Tappan Gymnasium to create a more inviting environment for the whole project. And we're also creating a new wellness fitness center. If this is the ground floor, you enter here. A new wellness fitness center that sort of creates this sort of L shape located here, making use of the existing fitness center and carrying it on further. More administration space. Downstairs, we're taking some really rabbit warrens of underutilized spaces and turning them into the new locker room spaces. And we're also looking at a level of renovation to occur with the two gymnasiums that are on the second floor, and then way up on the top floor is a large tennis pavilion. Those remain as they are, but we're looking at the amount of renovation work we can do to improve them and make sure that they will be have proper scoreboards and HVAC and things like that, so that they will last for decades successfully after you put this money into the Tappan Gymnasium. Then the second is relying on options 2 and options 3, where the old Schlunch competition gym is coming down, and that requires us to do more work at the Tappan gym in order to create a competition gym. And so what we show here is on the second floor, those two gyms that we showed you on the second floor being combined into one large competition gym with bleachers, and then also a practice gym being built in the space in between, new locker room spaces on the two, and fitness wellness spaces on the 2 floors below, as well as a renovation to the tennis pavilion on the top floor. And then I have this other option, option 3, where we actually build a whole field house. And the main difference there is really that the tennis pavilion becomes a much larger space that actually spans over, it straddles the Kearing Pool to become this large field house with an indoor running track, one of the things that was talked about in the education plan, plus all the renovations down below. Now, these are the options I've talked about. You see option 1, 2, and 3. You see 4 option 4s. I mean, you see 3 option 4s. The reason why is because the options at 111 Cypress Street, the new academic building, whether it stretches over the track or doesn't, it has exactly the same program spaces in it. So this is just to give a quick summary of what's in the various options in terms of the program educational spaces. And in each case, I mean, you can see how as you move up through the options, you have different amounts of existing classrooms remaining versus new classrooms being provided, but all sort of being designed to make sure that when it's all done, we have about 92 to 96 classrooms, or 98 classrooms that are needed for different reasons. You can see that there's the 24 science labs and other sort of support spaces and things like that. Over here, you add this dark blue column to these lighter blue column, to one of the lighter blue columns, to get the total that we'd be providing on the campus. And I have I think 3 pages of this. I won't go into it in great detail, but some have expanded libraries, some have new libraries. When we were able to build at 111 Cypress Street, we're able to place most of the expansion that's needed for the increased enrollment growth for the library and for the cafeteria at a satellite library, satellite cafeteria at 111 Cypress Street, which allows, as this says here, for the library and the cafeteria for the existing to remain in the main campus. And similar things with the performing arts. As you go from option 1 to option 3, you get more and more new facilities. When we look at option 4, we're providing some of the new facilities at the new building, and in the main building, it's primarily existing to remain. Similar things with Schlunz, or well, let's say with physical education. Of course, the main thing is if you, in option 2 and option 3, take down the Schlunz gym, which requires you to build a new competition gym at the Tappan facility. So then this is just a quick summary of the options showing the costs. These are total project costs, which means that it's the hard costs and the soft costs added together. The hard costs are the actual cost of construction, of bricks and mortar and steel. The soft costs are all the other costs that you need in order to build a building, and that includes the cost of surveys, the cost of soil explorations, the cost of traffic consulting, the cost of furniture and equipment that goes into the building, computers and things like that, architects' fees. So this is that big number of the total project costs. And I ask people to look at these as sort of order of magnitude costs and ways of comparing among the various options rather than a precise number, because we're at such an early stage and a lot of detail really needs to be worked out. But you will see that option 1, which accommodates the enrollment and does new science in this new facility on Tappan and Greeno, is $181 million. Option 2, which expands that and provides some other spaces and also provides music and performance spaces and things along those lines, goes up to $212 million. I show option 2 with Tappan, because in reality we have to build a new competition gym and some work here at Tappan. That makes that number go way up to $271 million. And then option 3, where everything is included, the number is almost $350 million. It's $348 million for that option. So that's options 1, 2, and 3. When we looked at option 4, you can see that the numbers are significantly smaller because the scope of what you're doing can be much more tightly tailored to the addition of this building at 111 Cypress Street, and then the improvement of the science program in the main building in the 2 different configurations. And those options vary between $105 million and about $137 million, depending on which combination of those options that you take.
Site acquisition. Do I mention site acquisition?
Oh yes, I keep forgetting to say that. This doesn't include, these numbers do not include the cost of acquiring the site. We don't know what those numbers are, so we're carrying, we have a line item, but it's at 0 at the moment. So that would have to be added to these numbers, certainly. And then the cost of the various approaches to Tappan Gymnasium also vary from $13 million all the way up to $74 million for the big field house. Although I will say that just yesterday we had a great meeting with recreation and with the athletic people, and we talked about some improvements to this, some additional scope, so that we expect that $13 million will go up somewhat. I can't tell you how much yet, but the idea is it won't approach these other numbers of 50 million, 60 million, and $74 million. And then we're also looking at options that we won't focus on here, but options for improving Cypress Field, options for dealing with parking on the site, and those will be thought about and developed as work continues on the facility. And that is the overview of the options. So I hope that wasn't too long. We can open it up to
packing more and more information into less and less time. So we're just going to say thank you for that. Let me just make sure there aren't any clarifying questions on the committee before we open it up to audience comment. Mr. Pollack.
Could you go back to your slide about 5, 6 slides back, that's sort of what do you get from each option with the different color text? Yeah, that one.
There are 3 of these.
So. That one's fine, the option 4 one. So when you get all the way over on the far right with the new STEM wing, which is, it's this sort of either of the two buildings that are the same size for the new building over on Cypress.
Yes.
And then, but one option which costs the extra money on the main campus is bigger. But the way you've described it is you get a lot more you get more science, newer science, but and you don't get anything that's not science. But you could, right? Because if you're building that extra space and moving things out of the science wing and you're building more space at the main building, then if you can meet the science program with the smaller building and you do the larger one, then you can kind of figure out what to spend the space on, right?
Yeah. And I will say that the option where we're renovating science in place, you're getting modern science labs. We have a little bit of a problem with them. They're so long and skinny because they're stretching out along the main corridor. But what we're getting with the other, where we're building a new science wing, is we're sort of getting science clusters. It's really more of a I'll say the 21st century look at the way a science department should be organized and arranged. But what this does do is it gives you flexibility and options with what you do with the rest of the building, because you could do you could take all those science labs that you've now emptied science out of and convert them into other things. You could also do other renovations in the balance of the building as you see fit. We were sort of this scope on option 4 is a really sort of tightly pulled scope, just around those main ideas of getting the classroom spaces that we need on Cypress Street and a new science program. But you could go further than that, and I say option 4 gives you flexibility.
Right, and I think there's an additional $20 million plus of money to spend throughout the building to do this renovation,
yes.
Right? And so I think there's some money in your budget to do things.
Yes, we've priced
D&D.
Certainly replacing the windows, other repairs and things like that.
Right.
But my question is really about things like black boxes and white boxes and chorus rooms and stuff, which really aren't included in 4A and 4C.
Right.
And then the way you described 4B and 4D, which costs another $25 million or $30 million, $25 million more.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hear you say anything other than it's much better science, which I'm sure it is, to build that new science wing. But my question is it potentially not only better science, but also backfilling some of those other parts of the greater program of what's desired that you're missing from, that you're missing and that you had in some of the wildly more expensive options 2 and 3, but you could maybe get them in 4B or D?
And David, I will say to an extent. So what we're doing there in that option is it's certainly more than just improving science, because it's giving you excellent STEM clusters, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. So you're improving all of those sort of areas with what we're doing. It also, and I didn't talk about that, but the culinary arts program on the ground floor, which sort of gets relocated by the renovations that we're doing in that area, gets a new facility in that scheme. The improvements that could occur to, as you said, black box theaters, a lot of other things, collaborative spaces being distributed around the school, are not specifically included in that, but when you have the option of decanting a large number of students and spaces and things like that to another site, which is 111 Cypress Street, you do have the flexibility of more easily going into the existing building. And if you decide we want that, but we also want a black box theater, you can do that easily in this scheme. If you decide you want 3 collaborative clusters distributed through the building, but on the far side away from science, you now have the space flexibility that you can achieve that more comfortably than you can when you have 2,000 students, 2,100 students, 2,200 students as the student population grows, and you're looking for temporary spaces to move them to.
Great. Mr. Glover?
With respect to the smaller building on 111 Cypress versus the building that expands the tracks, so I guess I'm talking about 4A and B versus 4C and D. What sort of assumptions have you made with respect to added costs of constructing over the tracks in both, and I guess I think about that in terms of limitations on the time periods in which you'll be able to do construction, paying for any sort of MBTA costs that are necessary, whether those be flagmen or anything like that, and also what sort of assumptions have you made with respect to time or a lengthening of the construction period, assuming that your windows for construction are going to be shorter when you're operating over a live rail line?
Well, those are good questions, and we have increased the budget for the options for B and D or whichever for the building that stretches across. It's not actually bigger. It's just it stretches out more. The building that spans the tracks. We would have to spend more time looking into the impact that would have on schedule. We know it'll have an impact on schedule. We have tried to carry a premium to the cost of the project in order to accommodate that. So we're very aware of that issue, and we believe if people decide to go in that direction, we need to really start sitting down and rolling up our sleeves and figuring out to the best extent that we can what those implications are. And one of the decision points will be, if this is great, but it adds a year to the construction schedule, and people can't wait a year to get those classrooms online. Is there a way of phasing that, or do we just go with the one that stays on one side of the tracks? So that's the kind of decision that needs to be made. If a decision is made to go in the option 4 direction, we can work as we go through this next phase to decide whether bridging over the tracks is worth it or not. I will say that both options, because we're trying to do a broader pedestrian area going over the tracks, even in the option that stays on 111 Cypress Street. And so that's simpler construction. It can certainly be phased, but I just don't like the idea of all those kids going down that skinny little sidewalk and wrapping around that busy intersection to get into the front door of the building located on Cypress Street. I'm trying to get them to be able to enter from Tappan. And so we have to deal with the MBTA in either event. It's just one is a much more intrusive intervention, I think.
Okay, good. I think, okay. Ms. Rem?
My question just related to this conversation. From a process standpoint, do we need, if we are interested in 111 Cypress, do we need to vote a specific option over the tracks or not? Or can the feasibility actually explore that question and we don't have to go figure that out now?
We don't have to figure that out now.
Okay, I just wanted to.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. That's the end of the presentation. It's time for the public hearing, which will open. We have 3 to 5 minutes per person, depending on the number of speakers. Can I just get a show of hands, quick sense of how many people want to speak? 1, 2, 3. Oh, okay. All right, let's start out for. Okay, good. So then we'll have some time for questions as well. So why don't we get through the public comments first, because we do have to do that, and then if there's time we can get some questions. So Nina Brown, you were waiting so patiently from earlier in the meeting.
Thanks.
If you can just come and state your name and your street address, just so we have a sense
My
of.
name is Nina Brown, and I live at 50 Gorham Avenue in Brookline. And both our children went to Brookline High School, and I'm very excited about option 4.
Can you come over to the microphone? Just a little closer to the microphone.
Talk into this microphone.
Yes, thank you.
Very excited about option 4. I think it has many, many benefits. I looked at the materials on the website, and I wanted to think out loud briefly about Cypress Field and parking under Cypress Field. And one of the things that I'm interested in having more study on is whether there is any potential with 111 Cypress Street in having some parking in levels below the classrooms. My office is right next to Post Office Square in Boston. It's a park with 7 stories of parking underneath it, and it works very well. My concern about parking under Cypress Field is what you need to get down to the parking if you have both access and egress separate on each side. That could take, and also a head house and some kind of elevator going down into it so it is an accessible garage. You could end up taking maybe half an acre out of the park in order to do this, which opens you up into having to seek a 2/3 vote of the legislature because of Article 97 to get approval to change a park use to a different use, which requires a 2/3 vote. So if their parking is really important in this major expansion of Brookline High School and has to be dealt with, but as we go forward in our thinking, if there is potential to have some of the parking be underneath 111 Cypress Street, that would be great. And when I was on the Parks and Rec Commission, we were involved in the new school at Lawrence Playground, and one of the things that happened then was very interesting to me is that the people in the neighborhood said they would rather have the teachers park on all the neighborhood streets than to have the underground parking there. And so that's what ended up happening. So maybe some kind of combination of some underground parking and some parking in the neighborhood might be a way of addressing the increased parking. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Who was next? Anyone, really? Hang on, come up to the microphone, please. It does, unfortunately. You're on camera. Yes, I know. I know.
I don't have much to say. I
just name and street, that's all you need.
My name is Alan Price. I'm at 12 White Place. And I just wanted to say that there are many students who are going to be greatly affected by this project but will never benefit from it. And many of those are suffering from renovations at their schools right now, and they're going to be hit again. And they'll never see the benefit of these things. So, and I am particularly worried about them. And also, my wife and I, for that reason, we support option 4 because it has a minimum disruptive effect on the students. That's all I really want to say.
Thank you so much for coming. Who is next? Becca, you're close to the microphone. Do you want to say something?
I guess I have a couple of questions. One is I've heard talk about a 9th grade academy, and there have been rumors that that might be the new building. Is that concept? But that did not sound like the program that you were talking about. So I'm curious where that is in the mix of discussion.
Okay. We'll get to the questions afterwards. Anything else? Do you want to just get on the record?
I will just say, as someone who worked very hard for the last override and expects to work hard for the next operating override, I would have and who is a parent and very connected to lots of young people and a huge supporter of the schools, I would have a very hard time working for an override that included a field house or any of the much more luxurious options. I think finances have to be a key consideration here. And so, thank you.
Good. Terrific. Thank you. Anyone else? Really? Wow. Okay. Well, so let's do Q and we do Q&A for the rest of the time. Okay. So ninth grade academy. Do you want to speak to that?
So we. I say we, speaking in this instance for me and the headmaster, and through many conversations with other educators, believe that the potential to use the Cypress Building as a ninth grade academy is an incredibly strong one, and it could be an incredibly powerful option for the high school. Understanding, of course, that it is a different ninth grade academy than 20 years ago. So where the ninth grade academy was at Old Lincoln, and everything was relatively limited to that site. And I think what's important is that if programmed as a ninth grade academy, the benefit is, one, you bring all students together for a unified experience from the K-8s. But the other benefit that is not was not necessarily available at Old Lincoln, or where Old Lincoln, that a farther away site to be used, is that you are a part of a unified campus, and so you are a part of a cohort coming into a large high school as part of a ninth grade academy, but you have access to the full course offerings. So if you are in Advanced Spanish 3 as a ninth grader, you are able to take that course and able to travel. And so you really still benefit from the full offerings of what I would envision as a unified 9 through 12 campus, as opposed to a ninth grade and a 10 through 12. But with that support, that structure, that vision for really embracing our ninth graders and setting them up for success from the moment they walk through the door.
Sure. Come on up. So can you come up to the microphone? Sorry.
My question is about 111 Cypress, and so originally we all know that was in the 40B list, and now it's not. So as parents are evaluating these options, the whole option 4 has my vote in concept, but is that equally a possibility based on whatever is going on with the building as the other 3 options at this time? Like, is that really a possibility financially, eminent domain, whatever, purchasing, however you guys are going to do it? Is it really an option, or is it more like, oh, this would be a great concept?
No, it is really an option.
Great. Thank you.
Mr.
I wasn't going to ask my question before, but I will ask it now. It's a PIP. I have a question about the moving of the cafe from its present location to the other one and the cost implication of that.
Yes, well, the cost...
I know it'll be approximate.
I won't be able to identify specifically what the cost of that is, but it does involve building a new sort of teaching kitchen, and then developing a cafe space in the lower portion of the facility. I mean, you'll find that it costs something, but it's a small number compared to the overall work that you're doing at the Brookline High School main campus. I can certainly pull out what those costs are, because we probably have them. Yeah, I just don't know them off the top of my head.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, further questions? Sir, sure, come on up.
So I'm John Fisher, 236 Beverly. I just a question to the board. These different options clearly have different degrees of disruption to the students. Some are shorter, some are longer. So would that be a serious part of your consideration in terms of choosing which option you go with?
The answer is yes, but Pip, do you want to just talk a little bit about the disruption under each option, just so we can get a little bit more clear?
Like the average time frame for each one of the options would be nice to know.
Okay, good.
Well, I will say that you can see from here, looking at the options going across the top of the page, that the more pieces of the existing building that have to get sort of taken down and then something built up. If you think about the first time you do that, the first time let's say you demolish that academic building at Tappan and you build a new building, that's going to take you about 30 months to do, something along those lines. We might be able to shorten that to 2 years or something like that. The second phase is once you take down another a portion of the building, like if you have a 2-phase building like that, that'll be shorter because the contractor has been planning that and getting the shop drawings done while the first phase is going on, and the questions have been asked everything's been approved, et cetera. And so that might take more like 18 months to do a second phase. These options will be disruptive to a certain portion of the population for a period of time. We'll need to find temporary space to house students. We talk about Old Lincoln and things like that, which has been done before. But obviously, as you do more and more and more of this step-by-step replacement of portions of the building, we can't, we're going to come up with some number of students that we think we can move and relocate, or programs, let's say, at a single time. We can't just take everybody out all at once. So what happens is that disruption occurs for a longer period of time. This option, at option 3, because this is like a 3-phase long project, we would see if we could do it in 2, but we're being conservative. We're saying it's a 3-phase project. That would take the longest period of time. So if you think about the first phase being 30 months, followed by 2 18-month phases after that, that shows you how long you're going to be in disruption. It was pointed out to me by a gentleman who I think as he was leaving, that the students who are here are the students who are going to arrive at the high school in 2021, which is the same time that we're hoping that the first major portion of this work comes online. So this is actually their school. Now, the options 4 have by far the least disruption of any of the first 3 options, because, as I said, and I think it's pretty obvious, that all the first phase of major construction is located totally, across the campus from the facility. And even when we're showing new construction, it's a much smaller amount of new construction than any of the first 3 options. And so in any of these, we're displacing, 2 things are true. We're displacing fewer students because we're removing fewer classroom spaces. And you have this wonderful opportunity to build this first and then move people from over here into there, which is not an opportunity you have with either 1 through 3. So I would say there is a big difference in disruption between the 3.
So just to summarize all that, if you could give us just a range of, so option 1, 2, just roughly.
Okay, so when we count I'm going to do it in spaces, not numbers of students, okay? Because I can't, and hopefully what we try to do is the spaces that would be disrupted by moving things around would be the program spaces rather than students. So there are 24 spaces in option, I'm going to say 1, 2, and 3 that get disrupted. Option 1 would get done in the 30-month time frame that I'm talking about. This we're talking about coming online 2021. Option 2, you would have disruption of the 24 spaces for that 30 months. The second phase, because it involves the Slunch Gym, actually has less disruption of the number of spaces because you've created a new competition gym and just the science classrooms that have already been rebuilt in phase 1. But that disruption will go on for another 18 months. So that's 4 years. And then if you go with option 3, again, you're talking about 24 disrupted spaces in the beginning, and I think a decreasing number of spaces being disrupted with each following phase. But you're going to add another 18-month phase to that. And so you're talking about 4.5 years or 5 years or something along those lines of disruption. Now, option, in the most disruptive of of these options, really we're just, of option 4, sorry. All we're doing is taking down a portion of that Tappan academic wing. There are 9 to 12 spaces there that need to get relocated, depending on how we count and how we think about it. Those might either be disruptions at the beginning of the project, if you decide to take 4B and do it all together at one time. And so those 9 spaces, which you would take some of the specialty spaces and things like that, you would take the copy center, which takes up 2 of those spaces. You would see if BEAT might be located temporarily somewhere else, and you'd really limit the amount of disruption to the student population itself. This is planned so that all those quarters actually remain intact, and you have circulation that continues all the way around the whole school during the whole construction. However, you also have the possibility of building this first, and then doing that as a second phase, in which case you can easily move all of that population, activity, program space into here. There's plenty of space for that, and that really limits the amount of disruption. And that amount of disruption, I mean, it takes a certain amount of time to give birth to a building anyway, so that disruption would occur if you did it in the beginning. It would still take that first 30-month chunk that I'm talking about, the idea of bringing it online for 2021.
So we were at 30 months, 30 plus 18, 30 plus 36,
Yes.
and then 30.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
More
And
or
you
less.
have a possibility with, so you have 30 with B and D, and then with A and C, you really, there really isn't, I mean, I guess it is disruption, but I just think you have a lot more flexibility for moving people around.
We're talking about 30 months to build.
I'm sorry, can you come up to the microphone? I'm so sorry, because people can't hear.
So I just want to hear the clarify. So for the building, the ninth grade academy, that's 30 months to build, right?
Yes. Okay, roughly speaking, yes. Yeah. And let me say, we frequently build buildings faster than that, but that's just what we're budgeting right now. We might be able to do that in 24 months. But, you know, that's a good thing to budget at this point.
Okay.
You would, as you worked on this project, you would work with a construction manager and develop what the actual construction schedule would be.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Oh, I was going to call it Carrie. Oh, yeah. Yep.
I'm
Yep.
Carrie Staff. I have 2 high schoolers from Stedman Street. I just wanted to clarify the 30 months that you guys are referring to. Is that from now and including all of this planning process?
No.
Or that's what, I think there's a lot of tittering in the audience about how could it take 30 months to build a building? But okay.
No,
Thank you.
we still have to do, first of all, we have to get money at town meeting, then we have to go into schematic drawings, then we have to pass an override to pay for construction drawings and construction, then we would do construction drawings, and then we would start construction.
We're talking
So,
about from now.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
more in before then.
Okay, and while I'm here, I just wanted to make another comment. It sounds like some iteration of option 4 would be wonderful. It's the cheapest, the fastest, the less disruption. My only concern is the concept of traveling, kids traveling from that corner all the way back to the main building. I have I've heard students have a difficult time now already getting from the UA building back to class on time. So I don't know if that has to involve some kind of scheduling process or programming, but I think that needs to be taken into consideration if we're going to go with that.
And I'll just quickly say that the passing time has been in the schedule has been a topic of intense conversation at the high school. The other thing that the headmaster said in one of our building committee meetings was one of the reasons for having a ninth grade academy there versus, for example, a STEM academy or something like that is, and academy is the wrong word, but just, the concentration of ninth graders is that if it were a STEM building or a science building, then you have 2,700 kids going back and forth to that building, whereas if it's a ninth grade focus, then you only have children going back and forth, for example, if they had an upper level science class or an upper level math class or an upper level language class or whatever it is. So it dramatically
Minimizes
reduces
the
it.
number
Yeah.
of-
I mean, the only other option that was discussed at the building committee level and rejected was the notion of basically taking Tappan Gym, raising it to the ground, rebuilding a state-of-the-art gymnasium and recreation facility at 111 Cypress, and then turning what's the current site of the Tappan Gym into an academic wing, which sounds brilliant. And I actually built a little sky bridge in my head over Reno,
right.
And then Pip laughed and said, Pip said, sure, here's the 9 figures you've just added to the project to do that, and so we very quickly moved away from that. But yeah, that was we were really excited about that for about 30 seconds.
That's a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Super. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry, you were waiting for such a long time, so is it okay if he goes first? Okay, go ahead.
For option 4B, the
Just
expand
do names.
Mark Penner, Fairmount Street. For option 4B, the expansion at the high school there, that wing on the left corner there, is that a complete tear down, or is that keep the existing structure in place and expand it?
It's actually just a partial tear down. There's, like I said, there's 9 to 12 classrooms that get torn down.
Okay.
So a portion of it gets demolished, and then a significant portion of that wing gets reused.
Yeah, because in all these complex phasing schemes, I'm worried about constructability and, our MEPs fed from this wing. So if you tear it down, you shut the whole building. The whole building down. Have you looked at it from a phasing from a constructability standpoint yet?
We're aware that the whole building sort of lives off of sort of a physical plant that's in the UAB and connected to the main building by tunnels. And those tunnels certainly go right through that corner of Tappan and Greeno, underground. So we're aware and planning on how we keep the building running, keep the pumps that are down in the basement there operational while we're doing our construction.
But I can imagine there's piping, heating that's above grade, above that tunnel.
No, it's actually it's all down below, and then to serve the rest of the building, it periodically comes up in various places. But for the most part, it really is tunnels running below, and then in the basement of that wing of the building. Yes, it may not simply be keeping the basement intact, but we would have to look at how we phase the construction so that the building is always operational. And we're very aware of that. We're working with our engineers and talking with them about that sort of thing.
You were so patient. Thank you.
Mary Rourke at Davis Avenue, 36. I have a 4th grader and a 6th grader that is currently at Pierce. And one of my concerns as we plan is some of that displacement of students. And also, as we go through the construction planning, are they going to be taking away that park for large construction vehicles and supplies, and what percentage of that? As we were excited about the Pierce Park remodeling, but my kids have yet to play on that grass because we're perfecting the grass to some sort of super grass. And so I think we need to really think about, what do we need? We need a place to educate our children, practically, expediently. We need a place for them to exercise and play, and again, expediently and practically, and look at the time that this realistically takes and be really practical. Because I would rather have my kids come home muddy with dirt and know that they exercised and were learning in a proper environment that allowed for that running around, than have something so beautiful that it's really just not practical. So thank you. But option 4 looks pretty cool in its various formats. So thank you for putting these plans together, because we're all very excited.
Great. And just one note, because Cypress Field is owned by the Parks and Rec Commission, it's not a school, it's not owned by the school department, first of all, there's a Parks and Rec Commissioner on the building project, Nancy O'Connor, and so not only are they close partners, but they really own the decisions that get made around Cypress Field, and they obviously have a design advisory team process, and it involves neighbors and abutters and others, and so if you remember from the Pierce Playground project, it's a very robust process. So part of the question is sort of how and when does that marble into this process? Right. So at any rate, that's
Yeah, and
that's
also the
discussions.
traffic flow on Cypress, as you plan to build that, the traffic flow is a nightmare already. I leave at 7 a.m. to just get through Cypress and get to Boylston. So again, considering traffic flow, the Cypress building looks great because it is that extra side building that gives a lot of flexibility, shortens the planning and the building. But I think that this is a very tight neighborhood. As soon as you put anything, one vehicle blocking the road, it's amazing how it backs up. So,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Good. Thank you. Any other comments from people? Just tell us your name and your street. Thank you.
Hi, Yukiko Ugozi, 34 Manchester Road. Regarding option 4, I have a concern about performing arts spaces. As enrollment grows, I believe that there should be a proportionate increase in spaces. And I understand from the presentation that there is flexibility in adding black box theaters, but then I think we'll be trading off with other spaces, and it will be helpful to know if we were to expand what we'll be trading the spaces with.
Okay. Do you want to address that, Viv?
Well, I will say that the idea behind option 4 was to accommodate the growth of the building, and one thing we were looking at is how do we accommodate the 9th grade in this separate building, and then to redo the science department. So when I say that there's flexibility as far as what you do with other things, I really don't mean that instead of doing, I mean, you could, instead of doing the full science, you do performance or something like that, just because this is one of the priorities that was given to us from the very beginning. But what I mean is that you could go into, because you're able to move large chunks of people into a conveniently located new building, you have more flexibility to take a portion of the building and do additional renovations if the need was seen to do so, to build a new black box theater over back behind the auditorium or something along those lines. Those would all be additional costs, but you have the space to do it in.
Right, but are there any of these scenarios in which the performing arts spaces don't essentially grow with enrollment?
So what we did is we looked at what was actually required with the growing enrollment, looking at utilization, and I believe that within a space or two, one way or another, and Deborah Collins from our office might be able to comment one way or another on this. We are in the spaces that we're providing. We are providing the space we need for music and things along those lines, art. A lot of that additional space is being provided at 111 Cypress Street. So we do have a new music space. We have a new art studio at 111 Cypress Street. We have new science at 111 Cypress Street. And so the goal of 111 Cypress Street was that's where we were doing the expansion that was required to be done.
Okay, that's helpful. Any other? All right, go ahead. Oh, sorry, can Naomi go because she hasn't asked anything yet? Go ahead.
Naomi Schweitzer, 14 Griggs Terrace. I just wanted to know in option 4, is there auditorium space in the building at 111 Cypress? So that the community of students there don't have to travel to have all 600 of them, or however many they are, meet.
Yeah, I don't think there's any one space that's going to hold 600 plus students at the 9th grade building, is there?
There really isn't, and that actually was asked about by the school and by the superintendent. We have looked at that, but that would be a very large and expensive space, along the lines of a gymnasium-like space or an auditorium-like space, and we have not added something like that into the facility. I think we have one large sort of collaborative classroom space that, when people talk about wanting to get 3 classroom size spaces together, but that's not 600 students. That's not the whole school. The whole school, when it wants to get together, would have to go to the library, to the auditorium, and to the whole grade. I mean, to the auditorium, in order to do that.
At the main building.
At the main building. At the main building. Yes.
Okay. Elizabeth, go ahead.
I'm Elizabeth from Beverly Road, Schlossberg, didn't say that before. So in terms of the next steps and town meeting and all that, just so I'm clear, this is what I'm thinking and tell me if I'm right. The vote to approve the funding for schematic design, that's what's happening in May. But that's going to be on one of these designs, and once that's chosen, there's no going back. Like if we all say, oh yeah, we like 4, and you get public comment on the Facebook, on the school's page about everybody likes number 4, committee likes number 4, it's 4. Okay, so
what's going to happen is next week the building committee is going, the BHS building committee, there was a devotion building committee, a Baker building, there's a high school building committee.
Yeah.
They are going to vote a preferred option and send that to all the relevant bodies, the building commission, the selectmen, school committee, as their recommendation.
So moving towards the override, so then it becomes, here's the option. So this is maybe a topic for another day, but then is there sort of a strategy for the people who are like, wait, I didn't know you were building a new high school? Like, you know, like, oh, I didn't get to weigh in and all of that. I mean, I know there's been all this, you know, we've talked about this before, but for the people here and whoever came last night and the people who are clued into this, this is obviously a lot of money, big decision, all the things that everybody's talking about are really important. I mean, I'm really happy about this project, and like I said, I like option 4, but so many people don't know.
Right.
And the timeline is so fast, it feels like. So in terms of the actual vote, not everybody knows what schematic design even means and how then you go into design development. Most people don't understand that. So I think, as a comment, I think you guys, or the committee, needs to really clarify that for people, like, reiterate again, like, we've done our homework for 4 years of visioning and all of this. We've arrived at option 4, and this is what's going forward, and there's plenty of time to refine it, but this is where it's going to be. I feel
good. Well,
I feel like nobody understands that except, you know, these people, the people from last night, and the people in half the people in the Facebook page.
Yeah, so I think a couple thoughts. I mean, I've having been on this committee for almost 10 years, I have no illusions about what the public does or does not know about anything. Not least of which is because I know what I don't know about things, which is a lot. So here's what I would say. There has been a concerted effort with the PTOs and school leaders. We've had at least 2, maybe 3 mailings of 1,000 abutters to the high school property about public meetings, and this is now the 4th public meeting on it. There have been articles in all kinds of places. There's been discussion, and yet there are still going to be many, many people who are surprised by this. So all I would say to all of you or anyone who's watching is, to whatever extent you can, tell your neighbors, tell your friends that this is happening. You know, write Facebook posts of your own, write your own emails. That would be helpful.
And I think people don't know, unless they sit there and log on to PSBMA like some of us do, that you can submit public comment online in a really short amount of time. So
good. We're a little bit over. Any final comments or questions anybody didn't get a chance to? Okay. There is a link to that point. There is a link online. You can submit comments in public online. And the building committee will vote a preferred option next Wednesday. So I guess I would just like to hear from the committee here if there are thoughts, questions, comments. If someone would like to propose an option that we like, and we don't necessarily have to vote it because we can indicate a preference to things. Ms. Jennings.
I would just express my strong preference of the option 4 in that one of the schools that I almost attended but had a lot of involvement in back in Britain had a incoming class facility which was incredible, and I know that many of my friends went there and had felt so much more welcomed having their own space to transition into a new place. And I think that that's a really important aspect of this that should not be overlooked. And I'm also really excited for there's a lot of with the addition of a freshman facility, you can think then about the structural support of the staff and faculty of the school, and how to support freshmen better. And I just think that's a very, very important thing.
Mr.
Well, for me, having had a child who was at a ninth grade school at the old Lincoln, and how well that worked for her and her friends, and most of the kids actually in that facility, and this one can only be better. It seems to me almost a no-brainer that we have to go with 4 in terms of cost, in terms of time, in terms of wear and tear on staff, on kids, on families, on the public. I'm not sure, even while we're discussing 1, 2, and 3 at this point. But I understand that we needed to look at all the options, and I think it should be some iteration of 4. And as you said, I assume you're an architect, there are many. Once you pick one, there's a lot of moving parts there. But you have the idea of where you're going, and to me, that's where I'd like to be.
I'm echoing both Ms. Jennings as well as Helen. 4 is a no-brainer, and I don't think we need to go through additional brain damage for 1, 2, and 3.
All right. I will only put in a plug for. It seemed to me that pedagogically that there were some differences among the 4 options. We don't necessarily have to pick that now, but personally, I have a strong preference for the options B and D, where you are building a state-of-the-art STEM center, which was not only about science, but also about collaborative learning and bringing other disciplines into that space, as well as freeing up space around the rest of the building to be able to incarnate more of the education plan pieces than you could under options 4A and C, because you just don't have that additional flexibility. So if you think about sort of the top, the 3rd floor over Schlunz, if you remove all the science from there are just different things you could do with that space in terms of collaborative spaces, in terms of other things, and or kind of leaving some of those classrooms and opening up more spaces throughout the building to have smaller groups, to have larger groups. Is something we've been hearing from the educators from the beginning that they're keen to do. And so at any rate, it seemed to me that one was particularly interesting.
I won't take up more time here, other than I wholeheartedly agree with what's been said, and also Susan, your addition.
Barbara, any other thoughts?
Excuse me, I definitely agree with 4, B or D. But one of the reasons that I like those options so well is that it does seem to leave the courtyard intact, and that can be really made into a beautiful sort of open space. We talk in the K-8 schools about having an outdoor classroom. There could be pieces of that in that courtyard. I also would like to preserve, as this will do, the main central building, because that, to me, is the way Brookline High School looks. That's how people remember Brookline High School. And finally, I would say that I do also like the option that comes over the track, because if it doesn't come over the track, we're losing some space, and we don't know what's going to happen over the years. And you can always use more space. There are, even if enrollment were to shrink, we could fill it, the space that is.
The other argument that was made about coming over the track was that it just unifies the campus a little bit more, because it creates an entry on Tappan for those students, that plaza, and it just unifies that as opposed to being on around the corner building.
I mean, I like the idea of being over the tracks as well. I would caution us as we think about it that we not become dependent on that. I think just based on my experience in doing air rights deals, trying to rely on the MBTA and be a slave to their process. There's going to have to be a lot of discussion with them. They're going to have to review all of our plans. They have to agree to let us do it. First of all, that's not a slam dunk, and we have to pay for the air. So there's a lot of moving pieces. They're going to slow down the process. If you make that building a slave to their process, there's a danger in that. I think, Pip, you made a good point that if we decide we want to go over the tracks, we think about phasing options, and maybe even a phasing option where we sort of, not to be negative, but assume there's a possibility that that second piece of going over the tracks or completing it over the tracks is going to take longer, and that we do the first piece of it
And do you find that true about A and C of the plaza option?
I'm less
Or
concerned
not,
about
not A and C, sorry. Which one was it? It was the plaza, A and B?
A and C.
A and B.
A and B.
I'm less concerned because it's more of like, that's almost like an extension of the bridge to some degree. It's a lot less construction, obviously. You still have to do all of the same things, but the scope is a lot less. And I think it'd be easier, you've effectively finished the building, and you could live with the building intact even with a narrow walkway for a little while. Not that that's an ideal situation, but it would be easier to do that.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have a pretty clear sense of the committee. Any other thoughts or questions? All right. For the public, public comment is still open through next week online. So please tell your friends, tell your neighbors, email everyone you know, and please let them know because this is an important decision and it's the largest project that Brookline's ever done and will likely to be for the next some number of years. So thank you all for coming. We have 2 more public hearings, which some of you may be here for. I apologize, we're a little bit delayed. The next public hearing is for Article 16 to authorize a 20-year lease of the Runkle School rooftop to host a solar photovoltaic installation. Mary, who's going to introduce this?
Which is this?
Photovoltaics.
I don't have the stuff. Sorry.
Sure. Okay, so we have a couple things here. One is we're going to just quickly read the warrant article. It's at your place. We're just going to quickly read it, and then we're going to have a presentation from Blue Wave Solar, and then we'll have a public hearing and a potential vote. So, the superintendent.
So warrant Article 16, submitted by the Board of Selectmen to see if the town will authorize and empower the Board of Selectmen to lease for a term not to exceed 20 years rooftop space on the Runkle School building for the purpose of hosting a rooftop solar photovoltaic installation, solar panels, and appurtenant equipment, subject to any authorizations, approvals, and reviews on such terms and conditions determined by the Board of Selectmen to be in the best interest of the town, or act on anything relative thereto. The explanation submitted by the Board of Selectmen: the town has been in contract negotiations with developer Blue Wave Capital LLC, Boston, Massachusetts, to install photovoltaic arrays on several municipal buildings, including Runkle School. As of late 2016, Blue Wave Capital partnered with new installer IGS Solar LLC, which requires an easement or roof lease agreement to install the panels. Once the lease agreement is in place, the town can resume negotiations with Blue Wave to execute the contract. At this time, the board is seeking permission to grant a lease agreement for rooftop space on the Runkle School, which should be the first site available for installation by summer of 2017.
All right, and with us, I believe we have Sandra down. So you need to stay, yeah. I think, does everybody have a presentation?
And I have a few extra over here as well if any of the members of the public are interested in following along with the presentation. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty right now, so we can't get it up on screen. But yes, I'm here to give you a very brief overview of the project that we're proposing for the rooftop of the Runkle School. We're anticipating our next steps, as well as answer any questions that you might have. As you're aware from the warrant article, we need to authorize the ability to lease or create a temporary lease on the rooftop so that the project can move forward. It's a very common requirement as a part of the financing of a solar PV system. And with that, I'll just get started on the presentation. So today we've worked with the town of Brookline for almost 2 years now to evaluate various rooftop spaces as well as parking lots and the potential for a ground-mounted system to identify those areas which are best opportunity for solar here. The Runkle School as a solar-ready building really stood out to us. We've been working with a variety of partners to identify what the best technology options are for the school. Presently, we are working with IGS Solar LLC, as well as Advanced Solar, which is an engineering, procurement, and construction firm to proceed with the project. We're estimating that the project will be approximately 116 kilowatts, and it'll be principally located on the rooftop. There's actually a diagram that's included on slide 5. And over the course of a typical year, it'll create just over 146,000 kilowatt hours, which is just about the equivalent of removing 21 passenger vehicles from the road, and it meets about 22% of the school's annual generation. Do you have any questions with regards to the system or what we are proposing to do at Runkle School that I can answer? So we're hoping that we can move forward with lease and what's called the net metering credit purchase agreement negotiations later this spring once the lease has been authorized by town meeting. Once those two documents are fully negotiated by the town, we'll move forward with permitting the project, which requires us to receive electrical and building permits, which will include a structural review of the Runkle School to ensure that the rooftop is sufficiently supported to take the weight of the solar PV modules. Thereafter, we should anticipate construction being over the course of the summer.
Ms. Glover?
Early senior moment. The last time we were here talking about a Blue Wave proposal, what school was that? Was that Runkle?
Yeah, it was the Runkle.
Why are we back again having the discussion?
We have different partners.
Here, can you use your microphone? Sorry.
So over the past few years, there's been a lot of differences in the solar industry. Presently, we're working with IGS LLC, IGS Solar, which is a really strong solar partner. They bring capital to solar PV projects. They do have a new requirement, though, that our previous partners didn't have, which is the rooftop lease. So effectively, we're back here because we need to ensure that the town is able to execute a rooftop lease. And based on Massachusetts law, it needs to be authorized by town meeting.
All right. Ms. Turner-Olden?
I have a little of a process question, and I think it's probably just because I'm newer to this discussion. I guess I'm not understanding, or I'm not aware of what the relationship is between, is Blue Wave, how is this all fitting together? And were they asking to utilize the space to generate the energy that is being utilized by the town? Or this is, how are all of the partners in this fitting together with the town?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. So it's actually a little complicated, as all things are in the solar world. But the Metropolitan Area Planning Council back in 2014 selected Blue Wave as their preferred solar PV developer, and they ran a procurement, and 17 communities, Brookline of which was one, participated in that procurement. It was run under MGL 25A11I, and that enabled us to work with the various communities to identify potential solar PV projects. So we've been working in concert with Metropolitan Area Planning Council, Brookline, MAPC's consultant, the Cadmus Group, over the last few years to push forward with the project. There's additional process and oversight that is required once the contracts are executed. Under MGL 25A 11I, the Department of Energy Resources also has oversight of the contract, so we'll seek approval from them. But that was our principal vehicle and how we came to work with Brookline to proceed with these projects.
Chalupski?
This project, if it goes through town meeting, would be done this summer. Is that what I understood?
Yes, that is my anticipation.
And if for some reason, which could happen on the federal level, they took away these incentives, What happens?
So most of the incentives are actually at the state level. So this project will be qualified for the current Solar Renewable Energy Certificate Program, which is anticipated to be in effect through March 2018. Additionally, it will receive net metering credits, and that is a different type of incentive program, which is administered or regulated through the Department of Public Utilities. And that recently was re-regulated or legislated, pardon me, and there is, a 25-year guarantee on receiving those net metering credits. With regards to the federal ITC, that one is going to be fully monetized by IGS Solar as the party. So, if, for instance, it went away in its entirety, your Brookline wouldn't be exposed to risk under that circumstance, because typically what happens is IGS Solar will take all of the incentives, monetize them, and work through a net metering credit purchase agreement to allocate over credits that are generated by the system to Brookline, so you won't actually be exposed to any of the volatility that any of the incentive programs have. Long-winded, short answer.
That's somewhat reassuring.
I mean, it is an interesting question, I guess, with respect to the tax credit that you get for the construction costs.
Yes.
That was endangered by what's going on. I don't know how that would affect this project. It probably would make it unfeasible to some degree.
It would make it much more challenging. The ITC presents, it's a 30% tax credit for the project that IGS is able to monetize. So it would change the economics certainly for IGS, but folks in my industry watch these things very closely, and presently, because the ITC is already set to phase out in the next few years, we are hopeful that it will be overlooked. So,
but what would concern me is if they'd start construction and then find out that it went away and just stop. Do we have any guarantees that they have to finish once they begin?
Yes, you do. So there's actual sections of the net metering credit purchase agreement, and while it hasn't been negotiated in full by the town as of yet, there are specific sections that provide for a change in law, requirements with regards to removal of the system, requirements with regards to decommissioning the system. So effectively, at the end of the contract, and also situations in case of default. So if IGS were to default on the contract, there are specific requirements that they must follow as well. So in that case, there would be certainly a set of protocol that are outlined in the contractual documents.
More questions from the committee? All right, thank you very much. We'll now open up the public hearing. Can I just get a show of hands, roughly how many people want to speak on this? One. Okay, excellent. Mr. Cole, please come to the microphone and give us your name and your street and your thoughts.
George Cole, 57 Reservoir Lane. Speaking both personally and as a member of the Building Commission. First of all, I'm totally supportive of the whole enterprise, but I do want to caution you as the school, essentially school users, that about the roofs. These panels sit on supports that sit on your roof, and both in terms of vulnerability during installation and also long-term, these are 20-year panels. Most roofs we replace after about 20 years. The Runkle roof is roughly 4 years old now. So in year 16 of the panel, we'll be looking to replace the roof, possibly. And I just want to make sure that in the contract, one, they do no harm to our roofs during installation, and two, when we need to repair or replace the roofs, there's a provision that that they bear the cost of moving their panels so we can replace roofs, because ultimately you don't want water on the kids even though you're getting free electricity. The second thing is the third rail of Fisher Hill, aesthetics of the rooftop. I hope you've done your homework here, because we had a huge controversy about rooftop equipment on this school, And I just hope you've given the neighbors a heads up that panels will be coming to the school. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Yeah, one sec. Any other public comment? Public hearing. Okay. So we'll close that part and go ahead and we can do some Q&A. Go ahead.
Do you want me to respond to those two questions? With regards to the roof, there are specific provisions, both that outline responsibility. Is it the result of the roof failure? Is it the result of something that the construction team did, etc.? That all provide various scenarios for the roof to be replaced, to be maintained, etc. At the end of the term, when the system is decommissioned, the contract also speaks to the condition that the roof needs to be returned to. Certainly it doesn't need to be returned to a brand new roof, but it does need to be returned to the condition that it should be in for the roof of its age. One of the reasons that we're targeting the Runkle School rather than targeting every rooftop in the town is simply because it is one of the newest roofs in town. As well as being designed for solar, it is anticipated that the roof will last as long as the life of the solar PV system. The solar PV contract is limited to 20 years, so at most the roof may be 24 years or so old by the time that it's removed. But in addition to that, there will be regular crews that are going up there once, twice a year to do maintenance on the solar PV system. They'll also be looking for signs that there may be additional issues occurring. Additionally, I would note that we are using what's called a ballasted system, so there are no penetrations to the roof whatsoever with the system. Rather, it is entirely weighted down with cinder blocks. That's why the structural review that we do is so important in advance of installing the system as part of the process for getting your building permit. But it doesn't, it's a lot better for the roof in the long run because it doesn't require any penetrations.
So in terms of the contractual language, who signs the contract and from the town's point of view satisfies themselves that it's, maybe this is a question for Mr. Cole, but just satisfies themselves that this is, so it's not the building commission doesn't sign this contract? Ray? No? We don't know. Selectmen sign the contract. So, and who reviews the contract and recommends the selectmen sign it? Town council. So, is there a way for the building commission to review it to make sure that, because the building commissions are responsible for, I don't know.
Yeah. So
we own our buildings, but we are not buildings experts, right? We rely on, so I guess I'm just asking who is going to, okay, so someone in the building department will review the contract. Charlie Simmons. Okay.
Well, so with regards to legal review, town council is not expert when it comes to this kind of finance. So I'm assuming we're going to get some experts who weigh in or write us an opinion about this.
Yeah. So Brookline is also working with the Cadmus Group, which is also working with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and they are what is called an owner's agent technical advisor, and they are providing guidance both in terms of the material of the contract as well as economics, technical advising, etc. Certainly, I can speak to the work that they're doing more so, but it might be more helpful coming from someone within the town or from the Cadmus Group themselves.
So maybe, Ms. Coyne, maybe we can take some of the notes from this conversation and route them to the Board of Selectmen and so that they understand the concerns about the level of expertise required our concerns about the level of expertise that might be needed to review this over and above town council's general legal expertise, but specific building expertise, or maybe the building commission has to look at it or something. But I think that would be helpful. And if I can draft an email or something, but at any rate, we should forward this on.
So I didn't hear the answer about the neighborhood.
Yeah, we were getting there. Sorry, she was getting there.
Yeah, I hadn't gotten there. But before I get off the subject of the roof, one other thing that I neglected to mention is that we also do the evaluation process that's necessary to maintain the warranty on the rooftop. It typically requires, the roofing company typically requires an inspection in advance and then an inspection after the system is installed to continue to honor the warranty, and we will work with them to do so. With regards to the neighborhood, there was a public meeting in the neighborhood, I want to say about a year ago, that was noticed. And I attended. It was unfortunately not well attended, but it did occur. Additionally, the profile of the panels is 18 inches from the top of the roof to the flat, so it's relatively low.
They're not like the upright ones.
They are not the upright ones. They look nothing like the system that is in proximity to this building. I'm not sure which building it's located on, but I think that we've all seen it. It's quite upright. These ones are very low profile. Additionally, like this stand, there's a parapet wall that's located all around the school. So really what you're going to be seeing is something like that.
Right. So I might recommend that the specifics about shadows and massing and the impact or lack thereof be very crystal clear, because that question will come up. If it hasn't, I mean, apparently it hasn't yet, but.
That parapet wall goes around the whole roof? Or
It does. It's a short parapet wall. There's also larger parapets that cover the mechanicals that were referenced, but.
Well, I suffered the slings and arrows, so I know. But I'm not clear where this wall is. Is it at the edge of the building, or is it at the edge of the solar panels?
It's at the edge of the building, if recollection serves. Maybe I'm mistaken. But I thought that there was like
There was some of the design of the building, I would think.
It's actually a part of the building.
Okay.
So I think I think we should hear from committee members as to their level of support, but regardless, I think one thing that would be very helpful would be to add to this presentation, because I'm not quite seeing it, sort of a picture of what this will look like mocked up, and whatever the implications would be. Even if they're minimal, that's fine, but the implications would be.
Last year we did provide a
Right, that was last year, right.
that actually detailed what it would look like from a variety of angles. That presentation hasn't changed.
Oh, that hasn't changed, okay.
And I am happy to forward it in electronic format if that would be helpful to the committee.
Yes. Last year we had a conversation about this and the high school and a couple other things when we said this was the one we would be willing to go forward with. Okay. All right. Further comments from the audience? Comments from the committee?
I just have a question, and primarily for the lawyers among us. I just am curious if you feel as though the language in the warrant article satisfies the concerns about the selectmen needing to have significant review of the contract terms, et cetera. I mean, it seems to me to satisfy it, but I just wanted a more critical eye to weigh in on that.
I think that the warrant article doesn't need to dictate exactly what needs to be done. I mean, I think with any agreement that we enter into, we have to rely on town council to adequately review it. I'm not sure there's any additional warrant language. I think this is sufficient, I guess is what I'm getting to. It doesn't relieve anyone of their obligation to make sure that the interests of the town are protected.
Because it's a modification of the building, are we going to end up signing this thing also? We don't know. Okay, so that would be another important thing to find out if school committee is going to end up signing this lease as well. Typically, we sign things that have to do with capital, sign lease on paint changes, so I would assume. Okay, any other comments, thoughts, questions? All right, so we have a proposed vote to support the warrant article. Does anyone want to make that motion, second it, and then we can discuss it? All right. Moved by Mr. Chang, seconded by Ms. Stram. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? All right, it's unanimous of those here. Mr. Pollack is not here. All right, thank you very much.
Thank
Ms.
you for
Brown,
your
we
time.
appreciate your time. All right, we're running a little bit behind, not too bad. Resolution regarding a net zero energy ninth school and the expansion at the expansion of BHS. All right, so on this one, the petitioners are here. Welcome, Mr. Lowy, Ms. Scanlon, Mr. Christ. All right, and so does everybody have a chance to take a look at this? The advisory committee's review is attached. And the recommendation is attached.
Over to Alan Christ and then Kathleen Scanlon. Climate change is real. What's also real is that the political climate has changed, which means that it's even more important that we act locally. Brookline, of course, on climate change really has been quite a leader. All the way back in the year 2000, the Board of Selectmen formally recognized climate change and began to take actions. And you all, as the school committee, have done very well too. We were just talking about Runkle. It's taken a few years to get the solar on top, but before that, the Runkle and Devotion are both excellent schools in terms of their energy performance. But we think that we can do even better. The schools, Runkle and Devotion, were built under standards established by the MSBA, they're higher than the building code, but they're not all that much higher. And as I'm sure you know better than I do, that along with the state requirements come certain limitations. But for the 9th elementary school and also the high school, we're providing the funding ourselves, so we definitely have opportunities that allow us to do better than we did with Runkle and Devotion. This warrant article primarily, as I say, deals with the 9th school, although many of the principles can also be applied to the high school. The reason we need the warrant article is to make sure that there's no ambiguity, to make sure that we have clear energy efficiency goals under our own town design process. Without the constraints that are imposed by the state, the design process is described in our building commission bylaw. And it requires consideration of environmental and sustainability goals, which include green technologies and energy efficiency, but it does not actually establish environmental standards or standards for energy efficiency. So this resolution establishes goals that the architects can design to. It establishes practical goals that architects and engineers are familiar with. The 3 major goals are LEED Platinum certification, a priority within LEED for energy performance, 16 points out of the 16 points that are available, and an energy use intensity. Sounds a little complicated, but it's not really. Energy use intensity is just how much energy is used per square foot in the building over the course of the year. The goal there is energy use intensity of 25. These goals are really very important because, in fact, net zero energy itself really isn't a design standard. It's more of an aspiration. But with these specific design goals, even if we're not likely to achieve a fully 100% net zero building, we hope to make a significant advance toward a net zero energy school. Those are the words of the warrant article. We came up with these goals based on recommendations of a significant number of architects that we talked to. Not only are Alan and Kathleen both architects, but we talked to a number of different architects and other experts in this field, as well as John Levy Architects, the project architect, and the project engineer. But we've also, going through the process of the warrant article, heard concerns that the warrant article should be more explicit about staying within the town's budgetary constraints. So early on, we talked with David Pollack, and then we appeared in front of the your capital improvement subcommittee. We've also been in front of the Board of Selectmen. We've talked, working more closely with the building department, and most recently last week we presented for the school subcommittee of the advisory committee. And based on all those discussions, we realized that just these goals that we put forward could kind of be seen as retirement requirements, particularly in the sense that the town takes resolutions, even though they're just resolutions, very seriously. So we agreed to establish lower minimum standards in addition. So based on the specific recommendations of the building department, last week the school subcommittee, the advisory committee, voted unanimously to support the warrant article with the addition of these minimum standards. That the only minimum required is to reach LEED Silver certification, to reach 13 of the 16 energy points, and to reach EUI of 30, which is an easier benchmark than reaching 25. So these goals, as I said, give the architect something they can design to, but they don't change the town design process in any way. They don't interfere with the town's cost-benefit analysis, which comes quite a bit later in the whole process, and they don't tie us down to any particular design. They just give us goals, specific goals to shoot toward. So that's an overview of the warrant article, but let me now turn it over to Alan Chris to talk a little bit about what net zero energy design actually is.
Is it the down arrow or the right?
This one doesn't work.
Here, thanks. Hi, my name is Alan Christ, and I'm a town meeting member in Precinct 4, as well as a member of the Green Caucus and the Economic Development Advisory Board. In my portion of the presentation, let's see, I'll discuss the components of a net zero site energy building as well as several precedents which have made significant advances on the path to net zero. Net zero buildings, wait, slide got flipped around. Net zero buildings include a variety of energy conservation measures. The primary components include a heavily insulated envelope, thermally decoupled sunshading devices, high-performance windows, and a carefully considered massing with north and south-facing window openings. Their mechanical systems often separate heating, cooling from ventilation through the provision of a 100% dedicated outdoor unit for ventilation air, and a geothermal or air source heat pump system is often coupled with this. They also use things such as demand control ventilation or energy recovery ventilators to reduce the amount of waste energy in a building, and power generation systems such as solar photovoltaics, as we just heard, are often incorporated. And this slide just shows kind of the balance of these different things incorporated into the building. And sorry, I need to go back. This got out of order. Net zero. This next slide here discusses net zero costs, and the costs of net zero construction can vary significantly from project to project, but cost parity with standard construction can be possible in some cases with integrated design. The image above includes two red lines which depict the unit cost of the Devotion and Runkle renovation projects relative to a variety of other K through 12 schools, some of which are either LEED Platinum or net zero site energy. And so looking at this slide here, the upper red line is the cost of Devotion, the lower line is the cost of Runkle. The light green are sort of sustainable buildings, not at the platinum level. The medium green are LEED Platinum buildings. These are all kind of in the New England area. And the net zero buildings get towards the higher end of this. Let's see. Well, there's not a consensus about the cost premium that's required for a net zero project. A recent National Grid study noted that a school project can achieve 25 to 27% energy performance beyond the mass code with 10 to 12 energy conservation measures. The incremental cost of these 10 to 12 energy conservation measures is about $6 a square foot with a payback period of 16 years, not including incentives. So the following slides here describe several net zero projects and their green components. The first in this slide is the Claiborne Pell Elementary School in Newport, Rhode Island. The Pell School is notable for achieving an EUI, energy use intensity, of 35 and $116,000 per year of energy savings, while limiting its construction cost to $265 per square foot, which is comparable to the $276 per square foot unit cost of the Runkle School renovation. The Pell School includes a dehumidification displacement system rather than conventional air conditioning, extensive exterior insulation exceeding the code by 35%, daylight harvesting, a dimming system, light shelves, and a carefully considered solar orientation. The next project here is the MacArthur School in Binghamton, New York. It achieves a very low EUI of 10 at a $616 per square foot unit cost, which is a bit more than the $528 per square foot cost of the Devotion renovation. And this is the closest project to truly net zero of the three that I'm showing here. It includes an ingenious massing scheme which optimizes its thermal performance, and it allows for well-lit classrooms with northern exposure, while also the ideal orientation for photovoltaic panels. It has robust lighting controls, as well as geothermal ground source heat pumps, and then finally, it used, and this is important to any green building, an extensive commissioning process, which is the process where they go back to check and make sure the systems are performing as they were intended. And so that's what really helped this building get to such a low EUI. Here's some images of the interior showing the corridors and common spaces in the MacArthur School. And then the last project here is the MLK School. This is in Cambridge. And it's another project whose budget is similar to recent Brookline School projects. The 170,000 square foot school was constructed for $420 a square foot, and this number includes $100 per square foot for hazardous materials removal. The 33 EUI is 60% less than typical educational buildings in New England. Similar to the MacArthur School, it incorporates substantial natural daylight in classrooms, high-performance wall assemblies, geothermal wells, rooftop PV, an automated dimmer system, and gray water storage and reuse. So, and then here's some images of the rooftop PV and the classroom and a mix of classroom and exterior envelope of the building. And so, on the whole, these precedents show that it's possible to make significant advances towards net zero while maintaining an optimal educational environment. While the construction costs vary for each project, many of the goals are achievable with an integrated design process that begins very early in the design process, now it is, and the use of extensive commissioning, as I mentioned earlier, to make sure that there's follow-through in the process. And then finally, a budget that looks at life cycle costs and payback periods over the lifetime of a building rather than a more limited time span.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Christ. think we all want the plot of land at Binghamton to put about 3 new elementary schools. I don't know if that's one of your choices for us, but that would be lovely. Sorry. Couldn't resist. Ms. Scanlon, welcome.
Although they had to rebuild that school because it's in a floodplain.
Oh, goodness gracious.
They built part of the school 10 feet above ground so it wouldn't flood. That was actually part of the design, thinking about the floodplain issues. So it's not quite ideal.
Yeah. All right. So never mind. Exactly. There is no silver bullet. All right.
All right. Last part. Hi, my name is Kathleen Scanlon. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 3. I'm the coordinator for Brookline Mothers Out Front, which is an organization committed to ensuring a livable future for our children in the face of climate change. I'm also an architect who previously worked on school construction in Los Angeles. You've now heard how we go about making a school net zero energy and seen that even if we cannot yet be sure if the 9th elementary school can be fully net zero energy, we can set that as our goal. So why pursue a net zero energy goal for Brookline? First and foremost, we have a moral obligation to future generations to leave a livable planet, and this urgently requires reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. Cities and towns like Brookline are the key actors and leaders who will reap the benefits they create by building towards net zero energy. Also, now more than ever, addressing climate change will demand action at all levels of government. 70% of all climate change mitigation measures and 90% of all adaptation measures are implemented now at the local level. In a new book that came out last weekend, Climate of Hope, co-authored by New York City former Mayor Michael Bloomberg and Sierra Club's Executive Director Carl Pope, they propose that local and state government, business, and individuals can turn the tide in the fight against climate change. Climate change may be the first global problem whose solution will depend on how municipal services such as energy, water, and transportation are delivered to citizens. Sorry, these are mixed up. Green buildings are healthier buildings with indoor air quality that increases productivity and comfort for all students, and they have lower operating and total life cycle costs. And higher performing buildings can translate into a competitive advantage and a differentiator for Brookline. There are other benefits of net zero energy building that are less obvious. Working towards a net zero 9th school is a natural next step in our town's commitment to addressing climate change. As you may know, in 2008, town meeting created the Selectmen's Climate Action Committee, which developed a comprehensive climate action plan. And that was to reduce our emissions and to consider climate change in our town decisions and planning. The Climate Action Plan sets a greenhouse gas reduction goal of 80% below 1990 levels by 2050. But Brookline's emissions have been flat for the last several years. Business as usual will not allow us to meet our Climate Action Plan target by 2050. A net zero 9th school goal puts teeth in this commitment. A net zero goal will have a significant impact on our emissions because it begins to tackle the biggest source of those emissions, our buildings. It focuses us on the performance of our new school and getting the most value from our construction and operating dollars. By taking responsibility for reducing our emissions, Brookline charts a path towards sustainability and a livable future for our children that other towns can and will emulate. Some have expressed a concern that energy efficiency could conflict with educational priorities. First, if there ever was such a conflict, this building is a school first and foremost. And educational values must come first. We are convinced that the decision makers 6 months or more down the road will put educational values first. But alternatively, a net zero energy school will enhance educational values. Let me read from the education plan that the school committee has prepared for the 9th school. Building a new school when our community and society are more conscious than ever of the delicate balance between environmental sustainability and ongoing development provides an opportunity to have the physical plant itself play a significant role in the culture, educational approach, and daily lives of students and teachers. The program further goes to say the physical plant can be used to help students learn about science, sustainability, and taking care of the environment. Brookline's new elementary school could stand as a physical demonstration of environmental stewardship and innovation providing a local case study for sustainable school construction. Throughout the 9th elementary school could be embedded opportunities for students to explore the arts, sustainability, and engineering concepts as shown on this energy dashboard on the slide that could be made visible to all students in a lobby display. There are many other communities pursuing net zero. Our neighbor Somerville has a goal for its community to be carbon neutral by 2050. Cambridge has adopted its net zero 25-year action plan. And Lexington's town meeting funded the creation of an action plan and task force to make all buildings in town carbon neutral as part of a net zero emissions plan. The most energy efficient schools that are consistent with fiscal responsibility should be a community value, held as deeply as any of our educational values. New materials and building methods are being invented and advanced every day. We live in a world marked by constant innovation. Why would Brookline not seize this opportunity to build a truly 21st century school that reflects our community values? The book Climate of Hope has another important point that I'll read. The single most important development in the fight against climate change, contend Bloomberg and Pope, hasn't been the Paris Climate Accord or even the advancement of solar, battery, or wind technology. The most important has been that mayors, CEOs, and investors increasingly look at climate change not as a political issue, but as a financial and economic one. And they recognize that there are gains to be made and losses to be averted by factoring climate change into the way they manage their cities, businesses, and funds. We're optimistic this trend will continue, but not because Congress will become more enlightened. Congress does not lead, it follows. So I'll end on this last slide. Somewhere in Brookline, there's a child being born today, 18 years from now, when she graduates from BHS in the class of 2036. We should be able to look her in the eye and say, we gave you the best education we could, and we also did everything we could to protect you from climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all three of you for coming repeatedly, having multiple conversations with us about this. I feel like we're probably all talked out about it, but there might be any clarifying questions along the way? Okay, clarifying questions? Okay, all right, so then I will end the presentation. We'll do a public hearing. We'll open a public hearing. If there are any members of the public who wish to speak on our consideration of this warrant article. Have at it. If you could just give us your name and your street address.
Hi, I'm Claire Stanfer, Precinct 5 Town Meeting member. And I wrote to you earlier. I want to thank Werner, Kathleen, and Alan for bringing this article forward because it's really important for our schools, our students, and our whole community. The school, as you noted, Susan, is the biggest project that Brookline is going to be doing.
Actually, that was the high school, but that's okay.
Pardon me?
That was the high school, but that's okay.
Okay.
This is the second bit.
But if you include the high school plus the elementary school and everything that goes into it, this is a huge project and one whose sustainability is very important looking forward and meshes completely with all of our goals for environmental sustainability. The purpose of this article is just to have this goal right in front of us from the beginning. We're not going to achieve this goal by trying to squeeze it in later on. We will be able to have a big chance of achieving it if it's our goal now, and if we plan for it and incorporate it in all of our designs, we have a big chance to do it economically. And I would just like to emphasize what was mentioned about the future. We're not building a school so that we can put the cornerstone in and we're done that second. We're building buildings that we have to maintain in the future as gracious educational environments that can inspire children and make them feel safe and comfortable. This is the way to start that process. So I urge you to enthusiastically support this article as part of the basic planning for our schools, our children, and our whole community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to make public comment? Mr. Lewis? Well, no, yeah, have a seat, yes. I would never want to stop you from speaking. come join us.
Yes. Pip Lewis, HMFH.
Do you not live here? How do you not live here? Do you not have
I
a
live
cot
very
somewhere?
close to here. I live walking distance from here
Walking
in Jamaica
distance.
Plain.
Okay.
30 Boylston Street, Jamaica Plain. I wanted to just point out that the Pell School in Newport, Rhode Island, that was shown, which Rhode Island, sorry, considers to be net zero ready building, was one of our buildings. And what I really want to say is that the Devotion School is actually much more energy efficient than the Pell School was. We've had two different energy models looking at the building at Devotion, and we are seeing an EUI of 27 in the designer's model, and an EUI from an independent reviewer, Andelman Lelick, of 23.5 EUI, which is very low. And in actuality, the Devotion School already meets the 3 criteria that were suggested as the minimum criteria for the town to adapt in terms of being LEED silver, although I must say we're still in the process of obtaining that. Having an EUI of less than 30, or is that what you said? So we're significantly less than 30. And we're looking for, although it's not finalized yet, 14 of the 16 points, and I think you said 13 which should be considered a minimum in terms of energy usage on the LEED scale, essentially.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Anyone else here who wishes to make public comment? All right. So we'll, Mr. Chris. Can you just come up to the microphone?
All right, it's Alan Christ again. Now that you've, I guess, chosen a high school option, we had some reservations about the high school because it's a renovation project, but with this scheme 4B, I mean, it's an autonomous building, which I think will, from an energy perspective, will really help out with respect to insulating the building and the mechanical systems and everything. So there too, I think that's a good decision from that perspective.
I should clarify, we haven't actually selected it.
Yeah, we haven't selected it yet. That's okay. It was a sense of the committee.
People in the public would be confused.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Anyone else wish to make public comment? All right, so we'll close the public hearing. Any questions or thought? Actually, we should make a motion from the committee, and then we'll have a discussion. Does anyone want to move?
So moved.
Okay, which one do you want to move? There's, I think the one that we are looking at is the one as revised by the school subcommittee of the advisory committee on the 18th.
The one would be crossed out.
Okay, so that will get moved, and then is there a second? Let me just get a second on that. All right, Dr. Jackson, any discussion? Mr. M.
So the one amendment that I would make to this revised version from advisory is that they had redlined the specification of Baldwin as the site throughout this revision, and I would move to place it back in, as we are not currently discussing any site other than that. So I would say that being more specific is better than being less, and I also think that from the perspective of the community, for me, I think it's important that while there have been challenges that have been raised to the Baldwin site, there have been challenges raised to every site that we have looked at. And what concerns me is that there's a mindset in the community that every time there is a challenge, that means that it can't move forward, as opposed to a mindset of when there is something challenging, we problem solve, and we seek ways to address community concerns that can allow us to move forward, but we solve problems. And so while what I just said isn't specific to this warrant article, I think it's an important piece to note, and I would like us as a community to start putting our problem solving hats on instead of our we can't do this hats on. And so with that, I would like to move to put at Baldwin back into the warrant article.
All right. So there's an amendment. Is there a second to that amendment? Probably multiple seconds. All right, Ms. Reiner Oldham. So we can debate that amendment. Is there any discussion on that amendment?
Well, let me ask a question. So I guess my question is, with that amendment, do we need to send back to advisory?
We would send back to advisory that we have done it with that amendment. They won't send it back to us.
They won't or will?
They will not send it back to us. They are writing their report. They've already voted. The advisory subcommittee has already voted this. Full advisory hasn't voted this yet.
Full advisory has not voted.
Right. So full it'll just go to the full advisory as part of their deliberation process.
I might just say as a comment, I mean, we originally did have, our language had Baldwin in it, and you're right, they took it out. I mean, I don't think it matters too much to us, except I think maybe part of their thinking was that this should apply, whatever happens. We shouldn't have to go through this all again. But I guess it's up to you to decide which way to do it. I think it's a little bit to bring the dispute about the school in is.
Except
I'm not sure it makes a lot of difference, but
Yeah.
we'll leave it to you.
I think Ms. Strem's point might be that there is no other night school other than at Baldwin, and so at any rate, Mr. Glover.
Just to be clear, it doesn't interfere from a process perspective. It only reflects the school committee's opinion as to what it should say, whether or not that opinion is seconded by or advising.
Right. It's just our statement about what we think of this warrant article.
Okay.
So we can choose to send whatever we like, and whatever we send, I would assume, also gets sent in the combined reports. Typically, when major bodies comment on warrant articles, our statement gets sent as passed by the school committee on this date, and that will get, I think that gets sent as part of combined reports. Is that right? Or is it only advisories?
The other question, I'm not.
Can you just come up to the microphone a little bit more? Sorry, it's okay.
I'm not an expert on this at all either, but I mean, the question is whether it begs for a debate on the floor of town meeting about this issue. I don't know whether you all think that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it might. I assume that it would still, there's still time for it to play out, that someone could choose or not to choose, for instance, to raise your amendment on the floor. And that would give you some options, I guess.
Got it. Any other comments on the amendment? It's been moved, seconded, discussed. All right, so we're going to vote on the amendment, and it means that a yes vote means that we are adding back the words at Baldwin to the subcommittee statement of whatever this one is. This one isn't dated, but 418 was this one, and then yeah, that's right, 418. Okay, so this one isn't dated. Okay, 418. So all those in favor, a yes vote is to add in at Baldwin. Okay, it's unanimous of those of us here. Mr. Pollack is not here. So now we have an amended main motion, which is this document saying at Baldwin. Any further discussion on that? Ms. Reiner-Oldham.
I just wanted to say that I think that it is incredibly important, and I think that this is the moment in time to be adding a resolution such as this in as we're about to embark on the next stage of these developments. And I think for many of the reasons that you stated, especially with it being a school and having a tremendous opportunity to help educate our youngest citizens about these important responsibilities, I think it's just a fabulous addition, and I appreciate all of the time that has gone into making this happen.
Other questions or thoughts? I think the quietness is because we feel like we've discussed this many times. Mr. Lowy has been with us, some of you as well. I think we're all excited about it. But
I'll just add one other statement of support to build on what Julie just said, and that is around the points that you also eloquently made about the connections between the energy efficiency of the building and education. And in fact, JLA Architects presented to us quite compellingly how much making the building energy efficient could enhance the educational experience, and also the amount of light in the building, not just the things that you can learn, but also the environment in which the children learn, and how much of an enhancement that could be. So I just thought in case you hadn't heard that, I would share that with you all, that they really made a very compelling case for that.
Right. Any further discussion? Okay, so we're back to the main motion as amended. All those in favor? It is unanimous of those of us here. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Congratulations on the successful vote. That's it for our agenda, I think. Is there anything, do we have new business now or later? Hold on. Oh, new business now. Any new business? All right. Seeing none, we are going to go into executive session for the purposes of anticipated litigation strategy pertaining to the proposed 9th Elementary School at Baldwin, because an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the school committee's litigating position, and for purpose 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel regarding architectural services pertaining to the proposed Brookline High School expansion. We need a roll call vote. Ms. Coyne, can you pull the committee?
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Dickoff?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Dr. Jackson?
Yes.
Yes.
Are we going to stay here?
We are going to stay here. We will not convene back into open session.
Just collect these, maybe?